Part 6 of the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure series, Stone Ocean, takes us through the story of one of my favorite Joestars of Jolyne Cujoh, who is the daughter of Jotaro from Part 3, who gets set up and sent to prison, and well, the rest of the story afterwards gets pretty bizarre, and it all leads to an ending that has literally changed the JoJo series forever. And it's also a long manga with over 150 chapters, but don't worry, I just read it for the third time just so I can make this video and you can refresh yourself or learn about this series with the manga fully narrated and animated, but let's get right into it. We start this series seeing a girl standing outside a car with tire marks on the road looking over a body on the ground, seemingly have ran him over, to then cutting straight inside a prison where she is literally just slamming her head on her bed saying that it's over, she can't go on living, and that she even wants to die. Why, you might ask? Well, a guard had walked by her cell and saw her, well, she was, let's say, it starts with the letter M and ends with Beishin. Yeah, like 2 pages into this part and Araki was already being freaky. What is with him always doing this? All of the other girls in the prison start laughing at her as she tries to explain herself, saying that she's never going to do that sort of thing again until she dies, when a guard comes down the hallway and yells out that both her and another prisoner are going to be transferred. After being handcuffed, Jolyne, our main character and Joestar of this part, gets to speak with her lawyer, telling her that she has now been indicted and that her bail has been denied, and that she will be transferred to the Green Dolphins Prison Administrative Jail, where she will stand to go on trial. Jolyne, however, tells her lawyer that she is innocent and tells him that he needs to defend her, and she also tells him that he should subscribe to a really cool channel called Otaking on YouTube to stay updated on more JoJo videos. Anyways, she continues to ask him when she's going to be able to see her mother again, in which her lawyer says that it might be a while, but her mother had actually brought her a care package, handing her a few items in a box along with her new prison uniform that she's gonna have to use. Inside of this box, she sees a weird gold pendant amongst the items, in which her lawyer says it's actually from her father that had divorced from her mother, with her father saying that this was supposed to be given to Jolyne if she was ever to be in trouble. And as Jolyne goes to pick this up, this pendant pricks her finger, causing it to bleed. Jolyne asks, what is this stone? And she asks why her lawyer brought up her father, who hasn't been around her whole life, with her lawyer responding that her mother has actually been trying to get in contact with her father, but he is currently doing research in Africa as a marine biologist, so it'll be some time before they can get in contact with him. But Jolyne responds to this saying that he'll never show up since he had abandoned her since she was 6 years old, as we see a picture inside the stone pendant showing her mother and her father. And yes, you're seeing this right, her father is Jotaro, the same Jotaro from Part 3 and Part 4 of JoJo's. Which I just gotta say, the fact that Part 6 is taking place as the daughter of Jotaro just makes this so cool, and it's gonna add so much meaning into this part as we continue on. And one thing to keep in mind as well is, even if Jotaro wasn't there her whole life, Jolyne 100% inherited his attitude, because she is just as bratty as Jotaro was when he was a teenager. Jolyne sees this pendant and gets upset at the sight of her father, and she throws the pendant away into a nearby drain in the room, where she is then taken on a bus with the same woman that was in the prison cell with her before, as they are being transferred to the prison, which is actually secluded on an island, with a bridge being the only way in and out. Jolyne and the fellow prisoner start to catch up with each other as she learns that her name is ERMES Costello, and she is going to jail for robbing a convenience store, in which she then asks Jolyne if she brought any money with her, since having cash would be very beneficial in jail, as ERMES shows that she snuck in money by literally hiding it in her silicone, let's just say, chest implants, which that's some dedication, I gotta say. The bus arrives at the prison as Jolyne is first ushered inside, but as Jolyne is being escorted and walking, she keeps hearing a voice in her head of ERMES speaking with someone, although ERMES is still in the prison bus with Jolyne outside. Confused at the fact that she can still hear her talking, Jolyne looks down to see a long string coming from her finger where she got pricked by the pendant that is running all the way inside the bus, where we see that inside the bus, the guards are interrogating ERMES to see if she is smuggling anything inside the prison. Jolyne's entire hand starts to unravel into more string as the bus starts to drive away, but before she can realize what's going on, the cops that are escorting her keep ushering pressuring her forward. Inside the bus, one of the officers goes to beat Hermes with their baton, but the string however stops him, causing the baton to instead hit the officer as the string snaps back into Jolyne's hand. Not only that, but snaps back carrying some of the money that the cops were taking from Hermes, as this makes Jolyne connect the pieces and realize that this ability must be from the pendant that her father gave her. And surprisingly, it's never fully mentioned in the manga, but the pendant actually had a piece of the stand arrow from part 5, which also makes Jolyne the only main JoJo protagonist to actually gain their stand from the stand arrow, which is pretty cool. Before we enter into the prison, we get a quick flashback to see how all of this even happened and how Jolyne even ended up in jail. Cutting back to the very first scene we see Jolyne riding in a car with her boyfriend named Romeo, when all of a sudden he crashes into a pedestrian, shattering the windshield as the car veers off the side of the road. Jolyne yells out to her boyfriend Romeo asking what he just did when she looks and sees glasses stuck in the windshield, realizing that they just ran over an actual person. When they get out of the car, seeing a body hanging in the trees. Jolyne goes to do the obvious thing and call the ambulance, but her boyfriend grabs her hand as he frantically asks her not to call the cops since the person is already dead, and he tells her to think about their future. If they get caught, they'll go to jail and they'll lose everything, and he convinces Jolyne that they need to hide the body. In the distance, they see car headlights approaching them, and with no other choice, Jolyne goes to help Romeo stuff the dead body into the trunk of their car, hugging onto her boyfriend as he comforts her, telling her that they don't have to worry anymore. But we all know how this goes. This is a JoJo series. Nothing ever goes that smoothly, because later on, we see Jolyne get arrested for the hit and run, where she then demands a lawyer, even asking them about how Romeo is doing, still caring about her boyfriend, when the lawyer tells Jolyne that with this situation, she should just enter a plea bargain, in which she will basically confess to being responsible for the entire accident, that way she can get a lesser sentence. Jolyne tries to tell her lawyer and demands, however, that she is innocent, but ultimately, when she attends court, she is absolutely cooked and she accepts the plea deal. However, it was actually all a ploy. As the judge is sentencing her, she realizes that she is being charged for the hit and run, but also for placing a body in their trunk that was actually still alive and not dead, as Jolyne is then sentenced to 15 years in prison, where she yells out to her lawyer that it was never mentioned that this person was alive. She thought this whole time that that was a dead body, but it was actually a setup. Her lawyer, however, just completely disregards her and actually walks away to Romeo and congratulates him on the win of getting away with this, as Romeo and this lawyer were able to successfully pin the entire crime on Jolyne, letting him go scot-free. But don't worry, we'll get to see a follow-up to Romeo later on in the series, but now we enter into Jolyne's prison life, where Jolyne is ordered to undergo a body examination, and oh my, yeah, this panel is 100% gonna need to be censored. Anyway, after the examination, through a window, she sees her former lawyer who set her up, speaking with the guard as he comments about how hot this jail is. As the lawyer goes to leave the prison, the guard passes him a note saying that it's actually from Jolyne. And when he gets back to his car, he opens up the letter, seeing it reads, "Enjoying the weather? You're not gonna stop sweating though, not now and not ever. Signed, Jolyne Cujoh." As Jolyne looks out the window, thinking to herself how she is powerless from this prison, but she won't be waiting her 15 years for revenge, that she will come find this lawyer, and she looks out the window, also saying goodbye to Romeo, her first love. The lawyer drives down the bridge, leaving the prison, when he continues to sweat, and he goes to turn up his car's AC, when a string wraps around his throat, coming from the vent, suffocating him, as he screams out trying to fix the AC, but this causes him to lose control of his car as he crashes into the barrier of the bridge, and Jolyne already has got her revenge as he is now dead. Which I gotta say, that's a pretty insane move by Jolyne. Just like that, already offing her lawyer and getting revenge. She may look good, but don't mess with her. Jolyne now enters her prison arc, as she is now introduced in, and of course, one of the things you do when you enter prison, they have to shave all of the prisoners' hair very short. But I mean, look at Jolyne's hair. This is iconic. She can't just let that go. So she's able to luckily be able to bribe her barber to just let her slide through and keep all of her hair. All of the prisoners now attend orientation, with the warden Yeah, he just looks kind of weird, and he also talks through a hand puppet of an alligator named Charlotte, so just pretend this alligator is giving this presentation as I say everything. But the warden and his puppet welcome the prisoners, saying that their prison values freedom and equality, and in this prison they're actually free to do a lot of things, like they can openly roam the designated areas, they can make as many phone calls as they wish, and they can also shower or read books or watch TV. Really, they're just kind of free to live here however they want. However, there are still a few rules. No one is allowed to remove their wristbands that show their prisoner ID, and also prisoners are not allowed to borrow from or lend items between each other, and also that possession of metallic objects specifically is forbidden. The orientation ends and Jolyne heads inside the prison looking for her cell, walking in and seeing a woman named GWESS already there, with Jolyne introducing herself to her new cellmate, and I mean, just look at her. We already know that she's gonna be a stand user. Jolyne goes to set her clothes down on her bunk when bam, GWESS knocks her back, grabbing her shirt, yelling at her that the bottom bunk is hers. But as she grabs Jolyne's shirt, a bird in her shirt pocket starts chirping, causing her to let go as she goes to hide the bird from Jolyne. Jolyne apologizes for this, saying that she didn't know that it was going to be such a big deal, as GWESS goes to move all of her belongings to the bottom bunk. But while she is moving everything, Jolyne notices the gold pendant from before along with GWESS's items, as she points this out to her, asking why she has that, as Jolyne goes to grab it. But GWESS smacks her hand away, saying that it's hers now, as she bought it off someone for a whole $2. But Jolyne tells her like, if you open up that thing, you'll see a picture of my parents, so that's obviously mine. But GWESS refuses and says that if she wants it, she can buy it from her for $200. But Jolyne is of course shocked at this and doesn't have that much to pay. But as she looks at her, she sees something even more shocking, as the bird that was in GWESS's shirt pocket now has little arms that lifts its head off, grabbing a few cookie pieces that GWESS was eating before the arms go back inside the body. Later that night, as Jolyne goes to sleep, she starts dreaming about the pendant and just taking in everything that has happened. Of course, sleeping on the top bunk, by the way. But in the morning time, GWESS just kind of creepily looms over Jolyne, watching her sleep, which causes Jolyne to of course wake up very shocked. GWESS, however, actually apologizes to Jolyne for last night and actually gives the pendant back to her, although she says that there was nothing found in the pendant. But with this, she asks Jolyne for forgiveness. And Jolyne, finally having squashed the beef with her now cellmate, she goes to get dressed, except her pants and clothes are completely soaked in water from GWESS spilling something on them. But Jolyne doesn't really suspect anything of this, and she just cleans it up and she lets her clothes dry, then later getting dressed and then heading to go get breakfast. Except by the time that she arrives at the cafeteria, since she took so long getting dressed and cleaning her clothes dry, the food in the cafeteria is completely sold out at this point. Jolyne tries to argue with the cafeteria lady on this, but she just basically says, "You snooze, you lose," when out of the corner of Jolyne's eye, she sees GWESS throwing away her food, seeing that she obviously got more than just one serving. As Jolyne goes to look in the trash, and she sees also not only the trash that she threw away, but the picture of Jotaro and her mother from the pendant, showing that GWESS had actually lied to her and she actually had this picture all along. GWESS walks down the hall speaking with the parrot thing that's in her shirt pocket, when Jolyne, who is on the stairs above her, uses her string ability to pull the parrot up to her and demands to know what the heck is this weird thing, and also demands for it to show her those weird arm things that she saw from before. When it actually happens is she sees these arms appear. However, Jolyne realizes that this isn't a bird, but it's rather a tiny human inside of a bird's corpse, which she then sees this tiny human dies in her hands as it comes out of the bird corpse. GWESS heads up the stairs looking around for the bird, as she did not realize that Jolyne was behind the string that snatched it away. As Jolyne looks at GWESS and realizes that this must mean that she also got an ability from the time that she had the pendant in her possession. Jolyne turns around and sees that this tiny human bird thing is no longer so tiny, and it's now the same size as her. And not only that, but there's blood all over the place now. At the same time that GWESS comes around the corner, now looking insanely huge, when we realize that the bird was actually not now human size, but rather Jolyne was now tiny size, having been shrunk by GWESS's stand ability. GWESS grabs the tiny Jolyne, throwing her into their cell's wall, telling Jolyne about her power, that she is able to shrink people aside from herself, and she tells Jolyne that she actually wants to break out of this prison, and that she is now going to be able to use Jolyne, as they should join forces to devise a plan to be able to break out. And she plans to do this by using the tiny Jolyne to be able to help her. And the plan, well, JoJo is a pretty bizarre series, as you know, because she wants Jolyne to wear a mouse corpse as a disguise so she can move around without any suspicion throughout the prison, to go into the control room to then unlock the door so they can escape, as GWESS literally forces Jolyne inside a mouse corpse costume thing. Jolyne obviously doesn't want to go along with this, but with her being like 2 inches tall now, she kind of has no choice, as GWESS takes her to a locked gate, instructing her to go to the control room to try and disable the electronic locks. And also, while Jolyne is in this mouse costume, she also forces her to talk in a very cutesy voice, like an e-girl playing Overwatch. So for this part, just imagine everything Jolyne says, she's talking like a diva main. Mouse suit Jolyne runs through the metal bars and hides under a desk, but as GWESS has also walked away, the range for her stand has started to make her powers decline, meaning that Jolyne is now starting to slowly grow in size and not be so tiny, which, since she's under a desk, this causes it to slightly move, alerting a few nearby cops. But before they can fully notice what's going on, Jolyne then starts to shrink again as GWESS starts to walk back towards the bars, but because of this, she already loses her mouse disguise as it caused it to be stretched out. The cops investigate around the noise from the desk, but before they can spot Jolyne, she uses her string to make a coffee pot spill on the cop, burning him, giving Jolyne a chance to run away and back through the metal bars. However, as Jolyne does this, chasing after her in the mouse costume is GWESS's stand, Goo Goo Dolls, which is actually chasing after her to kill her for leaving the mouse corpse behind. Goo Goo Dolls chases after Jolyne as she attempts to fit through the metal bars to escape, but as she has once again just slightly grown in size, she is unable to fit through this, causing Jolyne to have to hang onto some metal piping nearby on the wall to try and escape the stand who's trying to attack her. Jolyne is basically helpless at this point as Goo Goo Dolls goes to finish her off. But right before its punch lands on her, Goo Goo Dolls gets knocked back as Jolyne opens her eyes and she sees that her stand for the first time has actually materialized, as the cluster of string now forms into her stand named Stone Free, which I gotta tell you guys, this is actually one of my favorite looking stands in all of JoJo's. I don't know, just something about it looks so cool to me. At this point, Jolyne is actually stuck between the piping and the wall, but as GWESS appears, since Jolyne had hit GWESS's stand, that also causes damages to her main body, as Jolyne demands GWESS to shrink her again so she can finally be free from the metal piping. And GWESS, realizing that she is overpowered, has no choice but to comply as Jolyne falls to the ground, now being free. Jolyne finally fits through the metal bars, and she doesn't just stop there, she also forces GWESS to give her back the pendant, but as GWESS goes to hand it to her, she intentionally drops it on the ground, and as Jolyne goes to pick it up, GWESS attacks her, knocking her back through the metal bars once again so she can become stuck inside while GWESS is able to escape out, where then she also yells and calls for the guards to come as Jolyne is stuck inside there, where a guard turns around the corner, seeing her now in an unauthorized area. The guard yells out that they have a code 999 prison break, smashing a button to sound the alarm as the entire jail goes on lockdown, and the metal bars in front of Jolyne now have a barrier closing down on them. Jolyne does what a normal JoJo would do in this situation and tries to punch her way out of it, but it doesn't really work, as GWESS is on the outside just pointing at her and laughing, and also yelling and cussing at Jolyne, telling her that she deserves this. But Jolyne, of course, isn't going to take that disrespect. Her stand is a clump of string, so she's able to use that power to unravel her arm and go through the metal bars to punch GWESS, and then uses a part of her stand to hold her closer to the bars with her string. And just like her father would, Jolyne lines GWESS up perfectly to hit her with an aura barrage. The guards all come back to the hallway with shotguns ready to shoot Jolyne, but as they aim their guns, they see that she's now missing. As they're obviously confused confused about where she is, and they just assume and think that maybe they just heard another noise and maybe it's just a false alarm. But we see that Jolyne had basically forced GWESS at the last second to shrink her enough to be able to escape through the gate back to safety. And one thing with our first stand battle of this part that you're going to realize, and I'm going to bring up a lot of times, is that Jolyne is basically exactly like Jotaro. You'll see that with any problem that she's facing this part, the first thing she starts doing is just summon her stand and just try and punch her way out of it, exactly like Jotaro would. Now at the next day, as Jolyne is exploring around the prison, outside of the library, through a metal gate she sees a baseball roll by, which is pretty strange to see in a prison. When out of the corner of her eye, she sees a young boy with a full baseball attire come around the corner to retrieve the ball. As she looks around like, what the heck am I seeing? The boy grabs the ball and then looks at Jolyne and mysteriously says, "Jolyne, tomorrow at noon, someone's gonna come see you, but you can't. You can't go see that person, no matter what, as it won't just affect you, because if you do go meet them, something even worse than death will happen." Before just mysteriously running away, as Jolyne looks around again like, did anybody just see that? Before some guards come up yelling at her to get away from the bars and beating Jolyne with the batons. Later on that day, as Jolyne is eating lunch, with her fingers all bandaged from what happened, one of the guards comes up to her telling her that they have a visitor that's here to meet her. They handcuff Jolyne and bring her to the visitation room, telling her that she will only have 30 minutes maximum, and that while she's in there, she's allowed to hold the visitor's hands, but no kissing or getting naked is allowed. Which, you know, the fact that they have to tell her this probably means that someone in this prison has done that before. Jolyne stands there waiting to be let in when from a nearby trash can, she hears the kid from before again telling her to go back as he reaches out grabbing her arm, begging her to not meet this visitor, as Jolyne snatches her hand away asking who he is. The boy says that he can't explain that to her right now, but he urges her once again to not go meet this visitor. But as the guard tells her that she's ready to come in, the boy says that if she's at least gonna go in, she can at least take this with her, as he hands her a sacrum bone, which is like the bone at the base of your spine, just showing you that even anatomy is a JoJo reference as well. Jolyne enters the visitation room seeing a shadowy figure, and as he turns around and she gets a better look, she sees her father. Yes, Jotaro is back and here to meet his daughter. And despite being 40 years old, he still looks just like he did in part 3 and 4. Jolyne is shocked to see Jotaro, who she sees basically as a deadbeat, and she tries to run out of the room. As she runs over to the guard and actually punches him, saying that now she'll go to solitary confinement as a way to get out of this situation, which, you know, she maybe could have just like asked the guard to leave, but I guess this works too. Jotaro hits his famous and tells her that he came here to actually get her out of prison, as he pulls out a picture showing it to her, saying that the man in this photograph is JOHNGALLI A, who is actually being held in the male side of this prison, and that he is actually the person who framed Jolyne for murder and the reason that she's now in jail, and that all along it was actually JOHNGALLI A and not her boyfriend Romeo. He further explains that the car accident was all a setup. JOHNGALLI A sent orders to some thugs to throw a random hitchhiker out into the street during the rainstorm, and that Romeo and Jolyne just simply jumped to conclusions thinking that they had hit him, and that JOHNGALLI A is even the one that hired the lawyer to set Jolyne up. Which, of course, this is all a lot for Jolyne to take in, as she's just shocked hearing all of this, and she asks Jotaro why this guy would even do this to her. Jotaro explains that JOHNGALLI A is doing this purely because Jolyne is related to him, as JOHNGALLI A is actually a disciple of Jotaro's old enemy, Dio. And even though this is 20 years past all of that happening, Dio's disciples are still trying to kill Jotaro and anybody that he knows. As they are speaking, however, through a small window of the door, a bullet comes in, hitting Jolyne's chest, as Jotaro summons his star platinum to stop time. And when time stops, he's able to see that Jolyne's stone free actually stopped the bullet just before it actually hit her. But as time resumes, the impact causes Jolyne to fly backwards into the table. Jolyne and Jotaro get down, realizing that they are now under attack from JOHNGALLI A, who is actually a former veteran and a sniper. Over in the male side of the prison, we're introduced to JOHNGALLI A, seeing him revealed by actually having no clothes off and showering, which is an interesting reveal, I guess, where we see him setting up his sniper rifle that was actually hidden in a cane. Jolyne and Jotaro try and figure out how he can tell where they are inside of this room from so far away, where outside of the room, they see a small floating stand move down the hallway. Jolyne uses her stone free to try and pull it towards them, but as her string gets closer, the stand dodges her string and flies upwards, in which they're able to realize that this stand seems to react to air currents. Inside of the visitation room, the guard that Jolyne had pummeled into the ground now wakes up after being knocked out, and of course he's yelling at Jolyne and telling her that she's gonna go to solitary confinement. But as he gets up, he attempts to hit Jolyne with his baton when another shot fires through the door, piercing Jotaro's shoulder and also the guard. And I know what you're thinking, Jotaro can stop time, so how did he let himself get shot? Well, we can see his internal monologue basically showing that his power is just not as good as it once was in part 3 and 4, so his reaction time is just a lot slower. Jolyne uses her string to move a lighter that the guard had for his cigarettes towards a fire detector that sets off the sprinklers in the room, basically causing hundreds of now tiny air currents as the water falls to the ground, preventing JOHNGALLI A stand from reading their movements. Using this, Jolyne gets ready to fight against the stand when EMPORIO, who is the name of that little boy who we saw from before, tells her through the door to kick a rock underneath a pillar, where Jolyne looks behind her and sees a stone pillar in the room that looks like it's about to fall apart. Jolyne, however, is just as stubborn as her father once was when he was younger as well, and she just summons her stand saying that she's gonna go back inside the prison to defeat JOHNGALLI A before he can get to both her, EMPORIO, and Jotaro, as she wants to protect both of them. Jolyne chases after EMPORIO and heads outside of the visitation room and goes towards the trash can that she saw him in before, and next to it she sees a small door for a fire extinguisher, and she opens it and sees a tunnel inside, where she heads inside and it leads her to a machine room where she sees EMPORIO getting into a sewage pipe and washing away. As she heads inside, JOHNGALLI A attempts to fire another shot at Jolyne, but Jolyne summons her stand, creating a large string net to grab JOHNGALLI's stand, and now with it captured, she's able to punch it with her stone free, defeating both the stand and JOHNGALLI A, saving both her and EMPORIO, as Jotaro also drops down into the room. Jolyne now confronts EMPORIO on what is this strange bone that he gave her, but in the background of the machine room, we see JOHNGALLI A lowering down from a vent, and he aims his rifle getting ready to shoot Jotaro, but Jotaro summons his Star Platinum, hitting a gas line causing it to burst, exploding JOHNGALLI A successfully and fully defeating him. However, nothing is ever that simple in a JoJo series, because Jolyne looks at Jotaro and notices something strange. His bullet wound is missing, and also the spot where she got shot as well is fully healed, along with the guard as well, as a strange oozing substance starts to pour out from her hand and everything around her just starts to melt into a wax-like substance, as she realizes that everything that just happened was actually a hallucination. As she opens her eyes and she is back in the visitation room with everything covered in this acid-like substance, with her having only woken up due to her clutching onto this bone that EMPORIO gave her, which caused her hand to bleed. So yeah, basically Araki just wrote that whole fight, and now I had to both narrate and animate that just for it all to mean nothing. But anyways, Jolyne is able to only barely move herself as she uses her stone free to smash the table, causing both her and Jotaro to fall to the ground, waking Jotaro up, as Jotaro, in his brilliance, does the thing that he always does. He summons his Star Platinum and starts punching things as he punches the door, causing it to open. However, he notices that Jolyne had told him to use his Star Platinum, which then makes him realize that he has never told Jolyne his stand name, which also makes him realize that this is another hallucination, as Jotaro now wakes back up at the same point on the table. So yes, we just had a whole fight, got told it's a hallucination, wake up to get out of the situation, and get told once again that this is another hallucination. Now waking up for real this time, and I actually promise that this is actually them waking up now. Both Jotaro and Jolyne are unable to move, but once again, how do you solve things as Jotaro? You pull out your stand and you punch things, as he uses his Star Platinum to punch Jolyne, causing her to fly against the wall, which then also causes the door to open, and it also knocks most of the acid off of Jolyne, as she's now able to move and she's able to successfully pull Jotaro out of the room into safety. Which, yeah, this is definitely a Jotaro and Star Platinum type of move. But anyways, they hear the alarm go off for a code 909, saying that there is a situation outside the door to the meeting room, as Jotaro asks Jolyne if she still has the pendant with her, as that's very important, and also says that he has an underwater vehicle that they can use, provided by the Speedwagon Foundation, to be able to escape this prison. They start running through the hallways to escape when two guards show up, turning around the corner. However, one of the guards pulls out his gun and just point blank assassinates the other guard as he fits through the door, revealing himself as the actual JOHNGALLI A. He fires multiple shots towards them as a nether stand starts to slide down the wall named WHITESNAKE, which is the actual source of all of the acid from before, as Jotaro and Jolyne are now under attack by two stand users at the same time. And I just have to point this out, you're going to notice throughout the rest of this part that WHITESNAKE is a stand used by a stand user, but he's also basically completely sentient, and he is just basically autonomous and can speak and talk and do a lot of things by himself, which is pretty interesting. Jotaro summons his Star Platinum to deflect all of the bullets, but as he's distracted doing this, WHITESNAKE comes from behind him and attacks him, causing some CDs to come out of Jotaro's head, causing Jotaro's face to turn blank as he slumps towards the ground. JOHNGALLI A continues firing shots, with Jolyne blocking them with her stone free, as she opens up some of the window bars, telling Jotaro that they can now escape, where she sees Jotaro slumped against the wall as she sees WHITESNAKE dragging those CDs away from Jotaro. She gets a closer look to see that one of the CDs has the face of Star Platinum on it. And it's here that we realize that WHITESNAKE has used his power to remove Jotaro's stand power and also his memories in the form of these two discs, basically leaving him in a death-like state. And as he is barely conscious, he tells Jolyne to leave without him, which actually both confuses and shocks Jolyne, but makes Jolyne realize that even though Jotaro wasn't always there for her, he always did truly care about her. JOHNGALLI A comes around the corner shooting more shots at them, but Jolyne uses her stone-free strings to divert the bullets and jam his gun's barrel, successfully then being able to tie him up with her string and hitting him with an aura attack, successfully defeating JOHNGALLI A at the same time that Jotaro now passes out on the ground. Jolyne drags Jotaro through the window towards the beach outside, where they see the water vehicle from the Speedwagon Foundation, but at the same time a bunch of guards and dogs rush towards them from the fence line, cornering them. Realizing that it's over at this point, Jolyne puts her hands up and actually surrenders herself, as she uses a string to connect to the prison to speak with EMPORIO, as he asks her why she didn't just run away to the water vehicle since her father is already dead. Technically, by the way, not really, but anyways, Jolyne tells him that it's actually because she noticed that the killer ran back inside the prison, so she needs to head back into the prison to be able to avenge her father and get Star Platinum back. And with this, Jolyne allows herself to get arrested to also allow the Speedwagon Foundation to take Jotaro away, while inside the prison, we see WHITESNAKE go up to JOHNGALLI A and assassinate him. And from here, this starts Jolyne's arc into trying to get these discs back to successfully revive her father of Jotaro. And with this, we're going to get a lot of reveal into the Joestar bloodline and also into the true identity of the user of WHITESNAKE. Now moving on, back inside of the prison, we see another butt shot, which, man, Araki was on something writing this part. But this time, it's a shot of Hermes, the girl we met in the very beginning, as a janitor weirdly touches her while she's laying inside of the infirmary and steals some of the money that she snuck in, which causes her to wake up and remember how she even got here. After being sent into the prison after Jolyne did, she found a gold pendant in a drain, and when she grabbed it, well, you can guess what happened. It cut her finger too. And she is actually the one that sold that pendant to GWESS. But later that night, because her finger got pricked by it, she got a fever and passed out and now ended up in the infirmary. Waking up, she looks at the spot that she got poked on, now seeing a sticker. But whenever she tries to tear the sticker off, another one appears. And one of the stickers ends up dropping to her shoe, causing the shoe to multiply, which causes her to freak out and start to frantically try and peel all of these stickers off. But as she continues to do so, they just keep spawning in, where one of the stickers ends up going on her finger, causing her finger to multiply as well. But when she peels off that sticker, her fingers snap back together, also causing damage to her hand. Realizing what just happened, she tests this out on other objects around the room, and she starts to understand her power, that if she puts this sticker on something, it turns that object into two, and when she takes the sticker off, it causes them to snap back into one, that also causes the item to get damaged. Now moving forward, she is back in her own cell while the janitor who had stole money from her walks by, and she uses her ability to cause the janitor's mop to snap back and hit him in the face to get her money back. But as he collapses outside of her cell, she sees that his head also has two discs coming out of it, and being confused on this, she decides to take them out, in which he just gets up and walks away, as Hermes is obviously confused trying to figure out what this disc is. Later, Hermes sneaks into the bathroom to get some privacy to inspect this disc, and since she saw it come out of this guy's head, she tries to insert it into her own head, and as she inserts it into herself, it allows her to see the memories of the janitor, whose name is McQueen, and she sees a memory of a time that he was speaking with the stand Whitesnake about a hidden stash of $5,000 on the prison grounds, and also how McQueen was working alongside Whitesnake. McQueen happens to come inside the bathroom at this time in order to clean it, but as Hermes sees him, she confronts him about this disc, asking him what this is. But instead of being able to tell her about it, McQueen just starts to bawl his eyes out and starts to try to, let's just say, exit the game, since he's super depressed from losing his stash of money. Hermes obviously goes to try and stop him and pull him down from hanging himself. However, McQueen's stand named Highway to Hell causes any damage taken onto McQueen to cause damage to someone who touches him, now causing Hermes to also choke. And I just gotta point this out. His name is McQueen, like Lightning McQueen, with a stand called Highway to Hell, which just shows that even the movie Cars is a JoJo's reference. Moving on, Hermes narrowly uses her stand power, which name is Kiss, to summon stickers to create a duplicate belt that she tears the sticker off of, making it rejoin with the original belt, which causes it to snap, now dropping both her and McQueen to the ground and successfully saving herself. McQueen is really persistent, however, and he tries to log out of the game again, and Hermes tries to avoid the situation by literally just hitting a Joseph Joestar and running as far away as she can, all the way back to the women's cell. However, along the way as she is running back, she passes Emporio, in which she gets distracted and turns around because, well, a young boy in a full baseball gear just walked past her inside of a prison. Hermes turns around and Emporio just automatically starts telling her about everything and explaining the power of stands to her, and he throws a baseball to her that phases through her, as Hermes is looking at this like, why is there a child here in this prison? However, Emporio explains that he was actually born inside of this prison and that Jolyne had actually told him to look after Hermes, as he grabs her arm, saying that they should go talk inside of his room. Emporio then literally walks in between a wall, seeming to phase through it, heading inside of a hidden ghost room, with Hermes heading inside to see two people sitting there near a piano, whose names are both Weather Report and ANASUI. But just keep these two in mind, they're going to be very important much later in the series. Emporio continues to fill Hermes in on everything that's happened in the story so far, but when they are speaking, however, cut marks suddenly appear on Hermes's hand, showing that McQueen is really set at logging out of the game, and he even starts to electrocute himself. Hermes runs out of this ghost room and runs through the prison looking for McQueen to finally put a stop to all of this. However, when she finally catches up to him, I mean, just look at him. He's in a chair with tubes tied around him, tied to a socket with a bunch of saline, attempting to douse himself in it and electrocute himself again. Hermes tries to talk him out of this and, I don't know, probably plays 1-800 by Logic or something, where McQueen just starts going on about some freak accident that landed him in prison that's not too important. But even with her trying to talk him out of this and playing 1-800 by Logic, he still presses the button to electrocute both him and Hermes. But just in time, however, she was able to plant a sticker on McQueen's face, and being able to just narrowly rip the sticker off, causing his face to merge back together and knocking him out for good. And also being able to take his memory disc to find out where the money was hidden and also help Jolyne in the fight against Whitesnake. Now that we have acquired a new Jobro of Hermes being part of the story, we move on to the next day and we open this one with seeing two prisoners in the Green Dolphin prison farm who are attempting to get out of a barn and close the door when they get crushed by the door and then suddenly disappear. Later on, the warden, along with Charlotte the alligator puppet, which what? You thought Charlotte wouldn't come back? Come on, this is a Britty coded character. Of course we're gonna see them again. But the warden and Charlotte tell the prisoners that two of them went out to work in the farm and they didn't come back. But since it's impossible for people to escape from this prison, they must have just disappeared. So they are putting together a search and rescue team in which Hermes and Jolyne, along with a few other prisoners, all volunteer themselves as tribute to go and search for these missing prisoners. As they head out, a guard yells out that all of them that are going to the farm will have to put on like a virgin, which is actually what they call it, but it's basically a bracelet that will automatically explode if they try to remove it or if they go more than 50 meters away from this guard, as the guard literally then just gets on a quad cycle and takes off, forcing all of the prisoners to have to run after him and hopefully not get too far and just explode. Now on the farm, the group fans out to start their search with Jolyne and Hermes heading off together, and they start discussing what Hermes saw in McQueen's memory disc, with Hermes replaying it by inserting it back into her head, where she sees a memory of Whitesnake giving McQueen his stand ability, but they also notice in the disc's reflection that they can see a tractor, and in the tractor's tire, they see multiple discs, showing that Whitesnake must have a stash of these discs that he collects and that it must be somewhere on this farm. Jolyne and Hermes start searching around when they see two other inmates going into a storage barn and they see the exact tractor inside that they saw in the memory. They head inside to go look at the tractor, but the guard comes yelling at them that the missing prisoners may have drowned in the swamp as he gets in his quad and starts driving off towards that direction, now creating a problem for Jolyne and Hermes as they are so close to the tractor, but they also have to stay near the guard or else they're gonna explode. Before they run after them, however, Hermes looks around and notices something strange. There are 6 people here, but when they had left and headed towards the farm, there was only 5 prisoners who came on this search and rescue, meaning that there's now an extra prisoner that's not supposed to be here. All of the prisoners look at each other and they kind of do like the Spider-Man meme, pointing at each other, trying to see who is the extra prisoner. But before they can figure it out, their bracelets start beeping that they are about to be out of range since the guard had drove off. They look up and see that the guard's quad had actually crashed in the water and has blood all over it, and also that the guard's missing as his body had got swept away in the water. Their bracelets continue to beep when the prisoner that's all the way in the back of the group and the farthest behind them says that their bracelet is getting even louder when the bracelet explodes, killing them. The remaining prisoners all head towards the stream where Hermes sees a bucket near her starts to move, where she kicks it away into the water, and then all of a sudden she suddenly gets sucked into the water of the stream, where she sees that she is now under attack by an enemy stand. Hermes is able to use her stand on the bucket to destroy it, where she's able to surface to the water gasping for air, and she warns Jolyne to not come into the water. But Jolyne is Jotaro's daughter. She's super stubborn as she immediately heads into the water towards Hermes as she uses her stand by using her strings basically woven together to basically ski on top of the water as Hermes gets dragged away by the enemy stand power. Jolyne gets closer to the stand as they get into a fight as they exchange several punches with each other, where she's eventually able to line it up perfectly to pummel it with her famous aura barrage. Now with Hermes saved and back on the shoreline, she tells the remaining prisoners to all stand still as she actually knows that one of them must be the stand user, as all of the prisoners start looking at each other and start accusing each other once again. But Jolyne notices that one of the prisoners has a nosebleed, which means that they must be the culprit as they would have taken damage from when she had punched the stand. The black-haired prisoner, however, starts arguing that she only has a nosebleed from when another prisoner had grabbed her, as the 3 remaining prisoners all start getting into a shouting match accusing each other, but Jolyne has heard enough, and she does things the Joestar way of solving things. She summons her stand and starts punching things as she punches the black-haired prisoner, saying that she actually doesn't know which one is the stand user, but she's just gonna beat all of them up to solve this, which once again, she really is just like her father and she just punches her way through problems. However, surprise, surprise, it wasn't just one of them that's the stand user. All 3 of the prisoners are the stand user as their bodies start to decay as the stand appears again coming out of their bodies, as it was just using them as a shell and it's now able to morph back into its true body. And this stand actually technically doesn't have a stand user. This stand is actually a living organism plankton named Foo Fighters, and it's basically a group of plankton that had gained its power by Whitesnake giving it a stand ability disc. And I gotta say, this plankton actually looks exactly like the locked-in alien meme. Foo Fighters immediately makes a mad dash towards the tractor in the warehouse as it was actually hired by Whitesnake to protect the disc, but while it's running, it separates its body into 2 to create another organism to pull the officer away from Jolyne and Hermes as the main body heads towards the tractor. Jolyne heads towards the main body, leaving the other half to Hermes, who is able to grab the guard's body, bringing it to the shore and closer to them so that their bracelets don't go off. Foo Fighters tries to stop her and actually attack her, but Hermes uses her stand ability to separate her arm into 2, which the Foo Fighter grabs one of them, but when the arms snap back together, it causes the arm to punch Foo Fighters, defeating this decoy as Hermes runs towards Jolyne with the guard to keep her within range. Jolyne arrives in the warehouse, seeing Foo Fighters attempt to hide all of the stand disc in the tire, and she distracts Foo Fighters by asking it a few questions about Whitesnake while she tries to sneak a string past Foo Fighters in an attempt to attack it. But Foo Fighters sees past her plan and it separates its body into basically a goo of plankton to dodge her attack and grab onto Jolyne. However, Jolyne was also thinking 2 steps ahead of Foo Fighters, as the string wasn't just an attack, but actually was being used to wrap around the tractor's gas pedal, causing it to start the tractor and have it drive into the field out of the warehouse. Foo Fighters is forced to chase after this tractor in an effort to protect the discs that are inside of the tire, while Hermes sees Foo Fighters running and notices that the more that it runs, the more water it loses, which is decreasing its power since it's made out of plankton and it needs water to survive. By the time that Jolyne catches up to this, Foo Fighters is close to the tractor, but it's also lost so much water and hydration that it's basically starting to fuse into the soil and is almost dead. Jolyne comes up to Foo Fighters, but instead of finishing it off, she actually wrings out the water of her shirt to save Foo Fighters, with Hermes obviously asking Jolyne like, "What the heck are you doing? Why are you saving it?" Jolyne explains that Foo Fighters is one of Whitesnake's minions, but it was only protecting the disc not for Whitesnake, but for its own identity, because these discs are basically what gave Foo Fighters life. She then walks up to Foo Fighters, telling it that she will let it live under one condition. It must protect these discs not for Whitesnake, but rather for Jolyne and Hermes now. And Foo Fighters responds saying that it doesn't feel like fighting anymore and it accepts this agreement, now gaining Jolyne yet another Jobro for this part, which is making pretty good progress so far. Jolyne is then able to look through the tire and find Jotaro's Star Platinum disc, but as she attempts to put it into herself, it pushes her, causing her to get knocked back as it rejects going into her body. But they at least still have the disc to hopefully be able to revive Jotaro. Foo Fighters comes into the warehouse, now having taken over one of the dead prisoners' bodies named Etro, now basically being able to blend in with the group as a human, except she's still a plankton that lives solely on water as she goes to the ground slurping and licking up all the water off of the floor. So she's just kinda weird, or quirky I guess you can say. Jolyne asks Foo Fighters what she knows about Whitesnake, which Foo Fighters says that he rarely comes to this tractor, but only stand discs are stored here and no memory disc, and these seem to be throwaway discs that he doesn't really need, so that must mean that the important ones must be stored somewhere else. Which makes you think why he would have thought that Star Platinum would have been not important of a stand disc, but anyways. With this, however, Foo Fighters tells them that this must mean Whitesnake was only after Jotaro's memories and not his stand. The guards finally arrive on the farm ground as the group all 3 raise their hands to not get shot and let the guards cuff them and take them back. Later that night, as the police and guards are surveying the area, Whitesnake looks at the disc thinking about how it's a problem that Jolyne was able to not only defeat Foo Fighters, but also get the Star Platinum disc back, as one of the guards calls out someone saying that they should head back to the prison, where we see that Whitesnake's user is the church's chaplain. Back at the prison now on the next day, Foo Fighters is adapting to the prison life but is still just somewhat of an odd person, as the church's chaplain named Pucci is having a meeting with a prisoner named MIRASCHON, who explains to him that she realizes her actions have been foolish in the past, but she's actually meeting with him to repent and seek parole. Pucci responds to her asking her if she understands what the difference between man and animal is, and she asks him like, what are you talking about? But Pucci puts up his hand and is like, silence, wait a moment. I just ate this cherry without the seed and stems. But anyways, the difference is the desire to go to heaven. Keep this in mind, by the way, that'll come up later and be very important, but he continues that humans spend their entire lives to attain heaven, while animals just don't really care. But regarding her parole, he says that he can possibly speak to the committee to recommend this before he grabs her head, slams it into the altar as he pulls out a stolen cross from her back pocket and scolds her for stealing it before taking 2 discs and inserting it into her head. Later in the prison courtyard, Jolyne and Foo Fighters are playing catch while Hermes watches. MIRASCHON approaches them and offers them a bet. If Jolyne and Foo Fighters can catch the ball 100 times, she will give them $100. And Jolyne at first is a little suspicious at this, but Hermes and Foo Fighters convince her since, you know, money is on the line and that's important in prison. The rules are set that they are only able to hold the ball for 10 seconds at a time, and if the ball touches the ground, then MIRASCHON wins. And they start the game by throwing it back and forth and actually only have a few narrow hiccups of almost missing the ball or dropping it, but they actually successfully do this pretty easily and the two manage to catch the ball 100 times. MIRASCHON then offers them another bet, $1,000 for only another 100 catches. Once again, Jolyne tries to refuse, but Hermes actually says that if Jolyne doesn't want to do it, then she'll do it instead, and she grabs a baseball mitt from Jolyne and accepts MIRASCHON's deal. However, as Foo Fighters throws the ball to Hermes, everyone begins to return to the prison as their recess time is over, and a guard comes up to them and tries to grab the ball from Foo Fighters, yelling at them that it's now time for them to go inside. Hermes, however, quickly slides the guard a few dollars, which he grants them only 2 more minutes to play. But that's only going to cover him allowing them to use the ball, as the guard snatches Hermes' glove away, forcing her to continue to play with only her bare hands. Foo Fighters throws the ball at Hermes and she almost drops the ball, but she narrowly manages to catch it by using her stand. However, because she had used her stand, in her heart, she can tell that she was technically cheating. This activates MIRASCHON's stand, debt collector Marilyn Manson, that can tell when someone is cheating, now causing Hermes to be responsible for the $1,000 as a debt, in which the stand causes Hermes' chest implant stitch to burst open where she was hiding all of her money, giving it to the debt collector. But it's not enough money, as there was only $380 she had in her chest. Hermes tries to fight against the stand and punch it, but it swipes back at her, taking a gold tooth from her mouth, valued at another $30, as there is still another $590 that it has to take from Hermes. Foo Fighters also tries to protect her as well and punch the stand, but her hand phases through the debt collector, as it's actually invisible and it's an impossible to attack since it's basically the materialization of the shadow within Hermes' heart. The stand then stabs into Hermes, taking her liver as a payment for the rest of the $590 of debt that she owes, which I gotta say, I'm sure a liver is worth a lot more than that, so that's gotta be some form of overpayment. But anyways, having won now, MIRASCHON starts to walk back to the prison, but Jolyne throws out a Hail Mary of a bet with her that if Jolyne is able to make 1,000 consecutive throws, MIRASCHON will then have to give Hermes all of her possessions back. And MIRASCHON is a betting woman, so she accepts this as Jolyne and Foo Fighters start throwing the ball back and forth at the same time that they're walking back to the prison, as their time is now up, with MIRASCHON walking ahead of them, going back into the prison first to create a distance so that they can attack her. Jolyne and Foo Fighters run through the prison, continuing to throw the ball back and forth as they search for MIRASCHON, where they find her in a shower room. But as they head inside, MIRASCHON turns off the light, making it hard for them to see where the ball is. Foo Fighters just gets upset and irritated at this point, and she uses her plankton ability to shoot little black plankton blobs at MIRASCHON outside of the room, causing MIRASCHON to run away as they chase after her, still somehow keeping up being able to throw the ball back and forth, where they chase her into an elevator with Jolyne going inside after her while Foo Fighters is stuck on the outside still with the ball. Foo Fighters narrowly throws the ball to Jolyne as the door is closing, which Jolyne uses her stone free to unravel the ball through its stitching to allow it to pass through the gated elevator door. MIRASCHON tries to accuse her of cheating, but Jolyne technically has caught the ball in its entirety, so it's not really an out, as she literally backhands MIRASCHON and takes out her stone free, choking her, threatening her to return everything else to ERMES or else she's just gonna defeat her. MIRASCHON, being helpless as her stand has no fighting ability, is forced to comply as we see ERMES' money and liver all go back to her. But it's not completely over yet, as the elevator opens and the guard from before takes the ball from Jolyne as he was actually bribed by MIRASCHON. But since the game is still technically going, this causes Debt Collector to appear and attack Jolyne, in which it steals from her Jotaro stand disc as well as a few of Jolyne's organs. But before it can defeat Jolyne, she does one of the funniest and coolest things that she can do in this moment, and she takes the ball back and throws it at MIRASCHON, saying that the bet was not 1,000 catches, but it was actually 1,000 throws, as she repeatedly throws the ball at MIRASCHON 1,000 times in a barrage, completely defeating MIRASCHON as her organs and the stand disc all return back to her. Now having Jotaro stand disc, Jolyne places a call to the Speedwagon Foundation as they had taken Jotaro's body back with them from the time that they had gotten caught on the beach. The Speedwagon Foundation tells her that at this point Jotaro is basically dead and he has no signs of life, but Jolyne tells them that she had gotten back his stand disc, so they should be able to use that to revive him, but she just needs some help in figuring out how to get this disc out of prison and over to them. The Speedwagon representative tells Jolyne to meet them in the courtyard in 20 minutes as Operation Savage Garden now commences. However, things are just never simple in a JoJo series, because as Jolyne heads for the garden, EMPORIO appears again, telling her that she is going to need permission to go to the courtyard, as he calls her over to a room where Jolyne heads inside, seeing EMPORIO along with Weather Report. EMPORIO tells her that to get to the courtyard, they're going to need some sort of a key card, or they're going to need some good prison breakout skills, as he pulls out a map and shows her the path towards the courtyard, but since they're going to need to find a way there, EMPORIO has Weather Report tag along with Jolyne. Weather Report, however, is a little strange, as he lost his memories and does strange things like walking on his toes and is kind of just an aura farmer who just doesn't talk much. But he wants to get his memories back, and he assumes that they were also probably taken as a disc. And another strange thing about him is that he did not actually gain a stand ability like most of the people we've seen in this part. He was actually born as a stand user, with his stand being named Weather Report. So yes, his name and his stand are the same name of Weather Report, but his stand ability is actually pretty broken as it allows him to control the weather. They set out towards the courtyard, but of course, things aren't going to be easy as they're now being trailed by an enemy stand user. Jolyne and Weather Report start running towards the courtyard with the enemy RANGLER close behind them, who gets close enough to spit something onto Jolyne before Jolyne and Weather Report are able to disappear and lose his trail thanks to the help of EMPORIO hiding them. As they go to the courtyard entrance, since the courtyard links the men and female parts of the prison, Weather Report is able to pass pretty easily, saying that he's just returning back to his side of the prison, with Jolyne having to bribe the guard to be able to pass. But as she goes to give the guard the money, she notices different objects around her starting to flow and start attracting towards her. Once she enters the entrance hallway, Jolyne suddenly becomes suspended in air, with the enemy stand user Lang appearing, revealing his stand Jumping Jack Flash, whose power is to turn any victim that he spits on into a center of a zero gravity environment. Lang steals Jotaro's stand disc from Jolyne and he tries to run away, but Weather Report appears and summons clouds to phase through Lang's attack, attacks and steal the air resistance in the room so that the friction of Lang attempting to punch him causes his body to light on fire. But because there's now a fire in a prison, all of the fire alarms go off and cause the hallway to automatically go into lockdown. As the gates begin to close, all three of them are able to narrowly slip underneath the gate before it fully shuts closed, leading them into a factory room where Lang gets through first and he hides inside. Jolyne and Weather Report try to look for him, but everything they touch starts to lose its gravity, causing them now to float around through the room in a zero gravity environment. And without any gravity or any protection, this causes the blood in their bodies to shoot out as the air pressure starts to decrease. Now keep that in mind because we're going to see a quick scene that in the guards room while this is going on, they are reviewing the alarms going off when Father Pucci comes in and checks it out as well. But as he starts to leave the room, he sees a computer screen showing that there was an outgoing call from the prison to the Speedwagon Foundation, where he asked the guards to pull this call for him to review. Back to Jolyne, Weather Report creates cloud suits to protect both of them from the change in the air pressure and allow them to basically walk around this room with somewhat of like an astronaut spacesuit on. Now being able to bounce around in zero gravity, they head further into the room and they discover that Jumping Jack Flash has a limited range, as they can see that across the room, all of the objects and everything look to have normal gravity, basically creating a safe spot for them. With Weather Report trying to head towards this area, but before he can reach it, Lang appears and begins attacking him by throwing different objects at him. Jolyne tries to protect Weather Report by deflecting several of the objects, but Weather Report's cloud suit has been hit, causing it to no longer protect him and incapacitating him. However, in true JoJo's chess type of match fashion, right before this happened, Jolyne had hidden a string in Lang's ammo box and she's able to connect Lang to his projectiles which he had thrown. Jolyne then pulls Lang towards her, and with no other choice at this point to hopefully escape, Lang is forced to release the zero gravity. But with gravity now back in order, Jolyne is able to hit him with a barrage of aura attacks, successfully defeating him and saving Weather Report, while they also get Jotaro's stand disc back along with Lang's access key card, allowing them to now be able to enter into the courtyard. But once again, things will just never be that simple in a JoJo series, because when Jolyne uses the key card to open up the door, Pucci walks in thinking that it was Lang who was accessing the door since, you know, it's his key card, but as Pucci walks in, he instead sees Jolyne, as they are both confused to see each other, while Weather Report hides behind some barrels overlooking this, while Pucci rushes to go sound the alarm. Jolyne yells at him to not press the alarm, in which Pucci actually listens to her for some reason, and Jolyne just tells him that she just needs to go to the courtyard to go meet up with someone just really quickly. And Pucci just actually lets her do this and doesn't stop her, as he says to do something for others is unconditional love, and unconditional love is the expectation that you will go to heaven. Just another mentioning of heaven. Jolyne rushes towards the courtyard, seeing a man there, thinking that this is the person from the Speedwagon Foundation. But it was a setup, as it's actually a guard from the prison set up by Pucci, who pulls out a gun shooting Jolyne, saying that she doesn't have a pass to be here, which means that this is considered an attempt to escape the prison. Now you turn to the next chapter and you won't guess who we get to see here. You see those yellow clown shoes, right? Yes, we get to see the GOAT once again of Dio, as we get a flashback to the year 1988 where Pucci meets with Dio when Pucci was only 16 years old, which for context in this year would have been during part 3 while Jotaro was on his adventure to defeat Dio. This is going to be pretty important, so listen up. Dio tells Pucci that there might be a way to go to heaven, as Pucci just remembers this talk with Dio, and honestly he's just glazing Dio, as he says that he was a man who was young and beautiful, who also had an aura about him. Dio explains that the heaven he is talking about pertains to the human mind, where your spirit will go, and that your spirit will evolve as so does your power. And true happiness lies in being able to obtain heaven, and that Dio's goal all throughout parts 1 through 3 was to obtain heaven, as he was willing to do anything and sacrifice anything to get there. Pucci asks Dio about how he can achieve heaven, in which Dio says that he left everything in one place, the One Piece. Wait, sorry, wrong manga. I mean, he left everything in a notebook, but that notebook was burned by Jotaro at the end of Stardust Crusaders. But before burning it, Jotaro had read the book, so the only knowledge of what was in the book and how to achieve heaven would be forever sealed in Jotaro's memories, which is why Pucci and his stand Whitesnake are so bent on getting Jotaro's memory disc. Now back to where we left off, Jolyne just got shot as Weather Report, who is still injured from the previous fight, sees Pucci walk out of the room, shutting the gated security door behind him. The guard is about to finish Jolyne off when a frog falls on his hand, and he looks up and he sees hundreds of poisonous frogs start to rain down from the sky, burning his skin as they begin to touch him. Jolyne quickly uses her stone free to create a shield of string to protect herself, but since it's just string, some of the poisonous venom starts to leak through. Pucci looks up seeing the frogs raining down through a window above him in the hallway, and he realizes that this must be the ability of Weather Report, where Pucci is then forced to summon his stand of Whitesnake to protect him, but his pass card to get to the courtyard gets buried underneath a pile of poisonous frogs. Pucci calls out for a guard to come help him when the guard from the courtyard that had shot Jolyne walks in, and he looks like a pile of just mashed potato as he's severely poisoned as he comes in begging for Pucci to spare him, when a bunch of poisonous frogs fall on him before he can even give Pucci back his key card. At the end of the hallway on the other side of the gate, another guard approaches, but seeing all of this happening, instead of helping Pucci, he does the actual smart decision and he just runs away to save his own life. Pucci, however, uses his Whitesnake to throw both a frog and a disc at the guard, blinding the guard and forcing him to hit a button on the wall to open up the gate for Pucci, where Pucci sets out towards Jolyne in an attempt to get Jotaro's stand disc back as he heads into the courtyard. In the courtyard, Pucci and Whitesnake see what looks like Jolyne's body completely covered in poisonous frogs, thinking that she is dead, and they find the stand disc nearby as Whitesnake goes to pick it up. Jolyne, however, of course is not dead, and tells him that she's been waiting for this moment, as she had actually laid a trap as the disc had her string attached to it and she's able to pull it back towards her, showing that the frogs covering her were all wrapped in string to shield her body and only make it look like they were touching her. Whitesnake goes to attack Jolyne, but before it can land an attack, a pigeon flies overhead grabbing the disc, where it actually wasn't a person the Speedwagon Foundation had sent, but rather this bird who is here to bring it back to safety. And yes, this bird has a name, and it's named Savage Garden. Whitesnake runs to grab the guard's gun that was dropped before in the courtyard in an attempt to shoot the bird, but it's all out of bullets, and hearing other guards start to approach, both Whitesnake and Pucci are forced to retreat, but not before Jolyne attached a string to Whitesnake so that when it returned to its user of Pucci, Jolyne is able to see this, now having uncovered that Pucci is the stand user of Whitesnake. But also at this point she is severely injured along with Weather Report. And Pucci, basically having failed his mission, tries to kind of convince himself that, well, I didn't even need this disc, so everything is gonna go according to plan still, which, like, come on, man, we know that this was a big mess up for you, but anyways. Sometime later, which isn't really stated how long this is, Jolyne is now healed and is with Foo Fighters in the cafeteria getting their lunch, where she asks Foo Fighters where Hermes has been at. Foo Fighters asks Jolyne if she even knows why Hermes is in this prison, where she explains that Hermes came into this prison on purpose, where we now learn her backstory. Hermes had a sister named Gloria who was 10 years older than her and had inherited the Costel family restaurant. One day, Gloria was closing the restaurant and was scolding Hermes about how she didn't help out with the family business, in which Hermes runs out of the restaurant. Gloria steps outside, seeing a car parked outside, and heard some weird noises coming from somebody as she looks over and seeing some guy just shot and killed another guy before looking and spotting Gloria. Gloria calls the police, but weeks later she was found dead in a gutter. Due to the only witness being dead, the murderer, whose name is MAXX, could only be charged with tax evasion and aggravated assault. Hermes wasn't satisfied with this, so she entered the same prison in order to find him and enact her revenge. Now back inside the prison, in the prison's chapel, MAXX goes to speak with Father Pucci, with Hermes sneakily eavesdropping nearby. For the past few days, Hermes has actually been stalking MAXX, following his every move, at the same time that Jolyne and Foo Fighters are now following after Hermes, trying to see what she's been doing. Jolyne and Foo Fighters, however, think about the situation and they conclude that this is Hermes' problem, and so they actually decide to leave her to what she's doing. Sports Max starts walking through the prison as Hermes follows him when on a pipe he sees a picture of Hermes' sister Gloria, and recognizing this he goes to pick up this picture. Hermes comes around the corner saying that she has been waiting for him to remember her sister, and when he picked up the picture it had a sticker on it, which Hermes is able to use to have two duplicate pipes merged together, trapping Max in between them. Hermes walks over to Sports Max to explain herself when on a table nearby a taxidermy bird falls off the table, startling Hermes, and it flies towards her and actually cuts off her finger. But strangely enough, she actually can't see the bird. She takes off her jacket, in which she nearly captures the bird as it flies past her, and she uses her stand to punch the bird, defeating it, realizing that Max may have gained a stand from Whitesnake. Sports Max remains trapped in the pipe and he's slowly drowning when Hermes notices the table behind her is now flipped over and there is now a giant alligator corpse now chasing after her. And seeing this, she does a smart thing and pulls the Joseph Joestar and runs away, leaping and hanging onto a pipe from the ceiling. Hearing all of this going on, Jolyne and Foo Fighters come to Hermes' rescue, but as they enter the room, the alligator bites Foo Fighters' leg off, but they look around kind of confused at this as they also can't see this alligator. Jolyne summons her Stone Free to use its strings to be able to set up a net and locate where the alligator is at, in which she's able to locate it and hit it with an aura punch before getting hit herself and getting knocked back. She then casts a net of string around the room to try and locate it again before being hit one more time, as they realize that this invisible alligator corpse can basically come from anywhere, even the ceiling or the walls of the room. Foo Fighters, however, comes up with a pretty genius plan to tell where it's coming from. She sacrifices her own arm for the alligator to bite, and when the alligator chomps down, she uses her ability to shoot her plankton at it and defeat the alligator. During all of this commotion, Sports Max was actually able to escape the pipe that he was in and escape the room, and is incredibly thirsty now as he now leaves the room looking for some water. But instead of water, he finds a lady that let's just say she sells her services, and he tells her how they should go get a drink together and then probably drink something else that she can have to offer. A guy comes up touching this lady, in which Sports Max beats him up, except the lady is actually unable to see Sports Max as he has also turned invisible. So she just sees this random guy come up and touch her and then just basically flipping around and getting beat up for no reason, and is just super confused. Sports Max beats up the guy and he takes some, let's just say, substances from this guy, attempting to use it on himself. But when it doesn't go in him, he realizes that he has also died, and his stand Limp Bizkit has turned him into an invisible zombie. And being a zombie now, he eats the lady's brain. Jolyne and Hermes run out of the room looking for Max, finding this girl's body as she is also invisible now and starts attacking them, in which Jolyne sets up another string net trap to detect her movements when they look up and realize that they are actually now in the prison's mausoleum, or basically like its graveyard. So basically they're now in an environment to where there is a lot of dead people and now multiple zombies all coming after them. Using Jolyne's strings to detect their movements, they fend off the horde of zombies, but Hermes, being certain that Max will directly want to be the one to defeat her, she goes into the center of the room, basically aura farming and waiting for Max to come get her. And Sports Max does just that, going directly for her head to attack her, but Hermes already thought of this and she uses her sticker to duplicate her own head so that when Max bites it, she can locate him and pummel him with her stand kiss, beating him for her sister Gloria before placing a sticker on his head as well, tearing it off, causing them to merge back together and explode. At the same time that his head is exploding, she also pummels him with her stand, successfully defeating him and getting revenge for her sister. But having taken so much damage from the fight, Hermes collapses to the ground as Jolyne yells out for Foo Fighters to come help and for someone to come save them. After being caught for this, because of all these mysterious things that have happened around Jolyne and all of the problems that she's caused in this part so far, they send Jolyne to the Ultra Security Punishment Ward due to all of these continuous unexplained deaths and all these unexplained injuries that have been surrounding her. Basically, she's now in solitary confinement as the guards tossed her into a cell by herself, as several other voices from the other cells in this place start saying how there's a woman there, and one of them literally throws their number 2 at her door, which Yeah, that's pretty gross. While this is going on, Emporio reads Sports Max's memories using his memory disk, and he sees an interaction where Whitesnake actually spoke with Sports Max and gave him a bone and asked him to revive it with his zombie ability, with this bone actually being a bone from Dio that Pucci retrieved from Egypt. How that happened? I don't know, just go along with this. Max is able to use his stand ability to revive this bone with the invisible Dio bone zombie heading towards the ultra security punishment ward, with Whitesnake actually letting it go as it's curious to observe what it's going to do there. But then the memory stops as the disc pops out of Emporio's head. Foo Fighters, who is with Emporio during this, tells him that Jolyne has already seen this memory herself. So it looks like she purposely got herself sent to the punishment ward in order to look for this zombie / Dio's bone. Realizing that because of this, Whitesnake will most likely be going there as well to find this bone. And so Foo Fighters ask Emporio to help go save her, but Emporio says that that's impossible. Foo Fighters, however, then just ask another person in the room to help her, with her asking ANASUI, who is the person who we saw from way before, and yes, despite how he looks, this is a man. Emporio, however, warns Foo Fighters about ANASUI and tells her his backstory, that ANASUI is actually a murderer who grew up with a habit, no, a syndrome, to where he gets a desire to take things apart, like watches, cars, telegraph poles, really anything, and that one day he went to his girlfriend's place when he saw her in a room making love with another man. So then ANASUI did the reasonable thing. He disassembled both of them on the spot. Foo Fighters, wanting to help and save Jolyne, basically just disregards this warning and just doesn't care and accept ANASUI's help to go save Jolyne, in which ANASUI says that they should head over there right now to not waste any time. Oh yeah, also that if he can protect Jolyne, he has one condition. He wants to marry her at the end of all of this. Which, you know, good taste, my guy. He summons his stand Steel Diver, kicking a metal door, causing the guards to be alerted to come in and investigate this area, with them opening up the door before ANASUI's stand seems to phase through the door, hitting the guards and knocking them out. Where we see his stand's ability is that he can store his stand's speed and power into objects before releasing it. Back in the prison ward now, two guards named WESTWOOD and Sunny arrive to give the prisoners their shower. And by that, I mean just literally spraying them down with a fire hose. But while they're going from cell to cell, the fire hose suddenly bursts, spraying water over WESTWOOD, which he then gets mad at Sunny for, and they just start fighting over this and literally just beating the crap out of each other, literally hitting each other so hard it's causing their knuckles to break and bleed, in which WESTWOOD basically goes Super Saiyan mode and he knocks Sunny out, which Jolyne sees all of this happening and is just confused, to say the least. Now, before we see what happens to that, we go back into the prison, just one more quick scene to where we see Pucci reading a Bible, as he says that he has sent 4 stand users after Jolyne within the punishment ward, and he's sending them after her since he knows that she's looking for Dio's bone, and so he can't let her live. We then see another flashback of Pucci and Dio, in which Pucci asks Dio a pretty good question of what is the weakest stand ability. Dio explains that no matter what you are, everyone has strengths and weaknesses, but if he had to choose, I mean, there is this one stand that's pretty weak, which is a stand named Survivor, which is a stand whose ability is only to make people want to fight each other by inducing an electrical signal in their nerve system. So yeah, all this stand does is basically just make people angry and fight, or really, it's just like a rage baiting stand. And even though that this is the weakest stand, this is the stand that Pucci has now sent into the prison ward, and the stand that has sparked the fight between WESTWOOD and Sunny, giving WESTWOOD the power to be able to beat his partner. While this is going on as well, ANASUI and Foo Fighters use the guards that they knocked out to bypass the security doors and head their way towards Jolyne. Now back in the prison ward, WESTWOOD has opened all of the cells, as this ward has now basically turned into a fight club where all of the prisoners step out their cell and just begin fighting each other, with WESTWOOD rushing towards Jolyne to attack her, with Jolyne taking a defensive stance, attempting to counter him with a stone free attack. Westwood jumps over her attack before kicking her, but Jolyne narrowly flips out of the way and is able to tangle him with her string. Westwood is able to break out of the string pretty easily, as you can see his muscles literally shining as a result of the survivor stand, where him and Jolyne continue to just exchange blows back and forth since Westwood is now basically warded out. Jolyne hits him with an uppercut with her stone free, tying his arms to his neck with her string before kicking him back and pummeling him with a barrage of aura attacks. As one of the punches lands, however, Stone Free's arms get punctured, also causing damage to Jolyne, where she yells at Westwood asking what he just did, at the same time that she sees a disc start to come out of his head. Jolyne uses her Stone Free to stitch her arm back together, where both her and Westwood continue fighting, exchanging blows again, with their fight continuing as it turns almost deadly as Westwood gets Jolyne in a chokehold, with her trying to use her Stone Free to hit him off, but his grip is just too tight. But as she is in this chokehold, she sees his actual stand ability start to take effect as she looks up and sees small meteors start to crash down through the glass ceiling above them. A meteor is about to crash right into them when Jolyne narrowly uses her Stone Free to pierce Westwood's head, causing him to stumble back and Jolyne have a moment to escape his grasp, just enough for the meteor to miss her and instead hit Westwood. Jolyne then uses both her Stone Free and the incoming meteors to continue hitting Westwood, but once again, he is still not dead and he just gets back up ready to keep fighting. So yeah, I just want to say, Dio said Survivor was the weakest stand, but just look at how much damage this guy has tanked and just look at the fact that he is still standing and fighting. Jolyne gets prepared to keep fighting when out of the corner of her eye, she sees a nether prisoner go and grab Dio's bone off of the ground, at the same time that Westwood launches himself towards her to attack. Knowing that the bone is more important than this fight, Jolyne narrowly dodges the incoming meteor and attack, using her string to take off Westwood's boot, and then using that boot to deflect the meteor back towards him, knocking him back over a railing as Jolyne has finally won the match, where we see game set. And before we move on, I just want to do a quick pause here to say this was one of my favorite JoJo fights. This was so hyped to read, but let's see what happens next. Having a brief moment now, Jolyne then looks for the prisoner who took the bone, but as she looks around, she sees that all of the other prisoners in the ward have now been defeated, but their bodies look strangely bloated, and she only sees two strange looking guys standing in the center of them all. The older looking one, whose name is KENZOU, walks towards Jolyne, challenging her to a fight, as he stretches his arms and hands in ways that they shouldn't be able to move, and Jolyne isn't about to back down from a fight. Even though she's so injured from her last fight, she gets her fighting stance in American style, French style, even Japanese style, and Italian style. True JoJo style of moment. KENZOU tells her that he had drowned all of the other prisoners, which is why they look so bloated. But before he can finish his sentence and fight Jolyne, Foo Fighters jumps into the scene, shooting at KENZOU, intervening just in time as Foo Fighters tells Jolyne to leave the fight to her, at the same time that ANASUI also starts to enter into the ward as well. KENZOU summons his stand named Dragon's Dream, which can basically manipulate the concept of feng shui to show him the luckiest angles of attacking and also defending. Foo Fighters attempts to shoot at him, but he dodges the bullets, countering her by punching his hand into her mouth to drown her, where Foo Fighters collapses to the ground and begins to become bloated like all of the other prisoners were. KENZOU starts to walk towards Jolyne to attack her next, but Foo Fighters stabs her own finger into her own neck to let the pressure and water out, allowing her to attack KENZOU again by firing more plankton shots, causing KENZOU to re-engage the fight with Foo Fighters. While this is going on, ANASUI walks up to Jolyne, getting really close to her, and he tells her, "I love you." Which, like, bro, we get it, Jolyne's a baddie and all, but this is not the time for this. Jolyne looks at him and is like, what did you just say? But ANASUI changes the subject, giving her a backstory on KENZOU, which is really not that important, but just to summarize it, KENZOU has been here for 40 years already, and he's actually been sentenced to a 280-year life sentence for attempting a MAXX exit game with his cult. Foo Fighters continues to fight against KENZOU, but he continues to just dodge all of her attacks due to the power of his stand, with Foo Fighters seemingly getting attacked out of nowhere as KENZOU can use his ability to move his body around in near impossible ways to basically attack from any angle, leading to Foo Fighters' head being nearly decapitated for getting hit in an unlucky area. Foo Fighters, despite her head almost being cut off, still continues to fight as KENZOU turns his attention to Jolyne once again, but since he's distracted, Foo Fighters is finally able to land an attack of her plankton bullets before dodging KENZOU's attack to run towards the fire hose from before, hoping to get some water to replenish her body and heal herself. Jolyne during this looks at ANASUI like, what are you doing? Go help Foo Fighters. But ANASUI looks at her and says that he'll only intervene if Foo Fighter dies, as he made a promise to save Jolyne, but not Foo Fighters, which like, okay, I guess. Foo Fighters fumbles with the fire hose trying to get water out of it, but she gets tangled within the rope, and in like a Looney Tunes sequence of events, after getting tangled, she falls over the edge of the railing, falling down the stairs into a room, falling towards an electric chair at the same time that the fire hose falls towards the control panel, starting the countdown for the electric chair. She tries to get up, but her clothes are caught onto the straps of the chair, where KENZOU comes in and kicks her backwards into the chair at the same time that it's turned on, now electrocuting her, but not before Foo Fighters is able to, while being electrocuted, grab onto KENZOU, causing them both now to be electrocuted together. Jolyne jumps over the railings to go help her friend, and even though she's still very badly damaged from the fight with Westwood, she literally throws herself over the edge, seeing KENZOU is still alive, activating her stand with the little bit of power she has left to pick up a glass shard with her string to shoot towards KENZOU, which he narrowly dodges thanks to his stand as he went to the safest spot, as he goes to counter Jolyne before ANASUI nearly jumps in, now saving Jolyne. Now just stick with me here on what happens next, because all of a sudden now KENZOU then just starts bouncing all over the room away from his safe spot, as ANASUI actually stored his stand inside of Jolyne's body, protecting her from KENZOU's attack, now crushing his legs into springs, as aside from storing his power into things, ANASUI's stand Steel Diver can also just restructure anything from the inside. And with this Looney Tunes sequence of events, KENZOU bounces all around the room, leading to the only safe spot, which is inside of a bucket, defeating him for good. So yes, you just heard that right. We had that entire fight, and then he just bounces around the room, goes into a bucket, and then he's defeated, I guess. Now we are finally out of the prison battle arena, and we can continue on with the more important plot. We go to the Speedwagon Foundation, seeing Jotaro hooked up to several different medical machines and wires. The doctors comment that Jotaro's lack of will to live is causing his muscles to deteriorate, when one of the doctors tries to touch his head, causing Star Platinum to instinctively swing its arm in the doctor's direction, smashing Jotaro's IV, where cuts appear on Jotaro's arms that form the word Jolyne. Back in the prison security ward, Foo Fighters heals Jolyne's wounds, but there still is a mark on one of her arms that also won't heal that spells out Jolyne, very similar to what we saw on Jotaro's arm. This causes Jolyne to remember an incident from her youth, where we see a quick flashback, where we see a young Jolyne finds a wallet on the ground of a parking lot, but after picking it up, she is rushed by a bunch of police officers, and she is then later charged with larceny. Now at the police station, Jolyne's mother talks with the police, who agree to let her go, when in the lobby while she's waiting, Jolyne sees her father Jotaro come, and she's very happy to see him, that he's finally here to help her. But as she gets a closer look, she realizes that it's not Jotaro, it's actually just a random man just dressed like him. Which, like, who else aside from Jotaro would casually be dressed like this? But anyways, as she and her mother leave the station, they pass by a psychiatrist who is talking with some other parents within the police station. Jolyne hears the psychiatrist state that daughters without good relationships with their fathers are more likely to get into crime and bad situations. Back to the present now, Jolyne thinks about this, and with this, she realizes that Jotaro, having came to the prison to help her, she is able to fully understand that he has always cared for her, and all he ever wanted was just to protect his family, which is why he wasn't present in her life for a while. Now having defeated KENZOU, the trio begins to walk up the steps when ANASUI, who is still just drooling over Jolyne, whispers to Foo Fighters to make Jolyne trip in order to make her fall into his arms. And Foo Fighters only does this because she has some sort of a contract with ANASUI. However, before ANASUI can actually catch Jolyne as she is falling, Jolyne sees the prisoner who has Dio's bone in his possession. The trio attempts to corner the man, but when they catch up to him, they see him grotesquely transform into a plant with tree branches and leaves start to sprout out of him. And the man mutters something about the sun giving him energy before his body just bursts from the flowers growing inside of him. And then they see that every other corpse in the punishment ward suddenly blossoms in the same way. Jolyne looks towards the corpses when ANASUI notices flower buds now blooming on her face, and he stops her from walking any further. However, the buds disappear as soon as she turns around and she gets out of the sunlight. ANASUI is able to tell that the corpses turned into plants not because of a stand power, but actually because of the power of the bone, as he holds Jolyne and tastes the flower sprouting on her face in a very weird way, which I'm sure he's probably thoroughly enjoying this right now. They see the bone, however, start to fuse with a part of the plant where inside of it an embryo starts to grow of a green goblin looking thing that happens to also have the same Joestar birthmark that Jolyne does. Jolyne, recognizing this birthmark, runs to grab the embryo out of the plant as she's actually sacrificing herself as her body starts to grow multiple plants. When out of the corner of his eye, ANASUI notices a person running behind a corner, as he goes to see that this is actually somebody named Cujoh, who is actually the stand wielder of Survivor, who cowers in the corner crying and begging for his life when he's confronted by ANASUI. ANASUI actually doesn't hurt him or do anything like that and just lets him live and tells him that he can just leave. But as he starts to walk away, the last standing person in the prison, whose name is DNG, who we actually saw from before standing in the center back when KENZOU was first introduced, grabs onto Cujoh, which suddenly causes damage to DNG's left arm as ANASUI actually stored his steel diver's power in Cujoh as a trap. And just like that, DNG is defeated. So yeah, he was just introduced and defeated right away, at the same time that Cujoh also tries to run out as well. Now honestly, this isn't really clear to me exactly what happens here, but you flip the page from this and now Jolyne, ANASUI, and Foo Fighters are just out of the prison ward and they're getting on a motorboat to cross a swamp. How exactly this happened, I don't really know, but just follow along. They get on this motorboat trying to start it, but as they're having difficulty, a weird green looking stand thing comes onto the boat, helping them start it, and starts to explain to ANASUI how to use and control the boat, just casually hopping onto the boat with them. This weird stand, whose name is Yo-Yo Ma, is actually an autonomous stand of DNG, who, despite what it looked like, is actually still alive, as the stand swallows the green embryo that Jolyne had and almost eats it. Jolyne instantly summons her stand and tries punching Yo-Yo Ma, with Foo Fighters and ANASUI rushing over to try and pull the embryo out of it, but even with Steel Diver being able to phase through the stand into its stomach, they just can't get the embryo out of it. Yo-Yo Ma at this time just basically starts rage baiting the group, just completely messing with them, apologizing for dirtying Jolyne's shoes, saying that he's gonna polish them for her, and he gives her something to read while they're in the boat, as the group realizes that even when they tried to attack him, that they basically just cannot defeat Yo-Yo Ma, as ANASUI tells Foo Fighters that in order to defeat it, she needs to go back into the prison to kill the main body of DNG. And with the green baby still being stuck inside of Yo-Yo Ma, Jolyne and ANASUI are forced to bring it along with them as they need to get it out of him, with Jolyne and ANASUI departing on the boat as Foo Fighters goes back to the prison. On the motorboat, Jolyne and ANASUI see multiple police boats passing by ahead as the prison has finally been alerted of something going on in the punishment ward, forcing Jolyne and ANASUI to hide in a patch of grass, disguising themselves before attempting to flee past the guards and start their engines. The guards, however, spot them attempting to leave, and they actually open fire on their boat with a mounted machine gun that they have, shooting towards Jolyne and ANASUI. ANASUI summons his diver down, punching the guards and saying that they are now going to take over the police boat. But as Jolyne attempts to tell him something, she notices that her tongue and her face are being slowly melted from Yo-Yo Ma, who has the power of acidic spit, and she is unable to speak and tell ANASUI anything. Jolyne frantically attempts to warn ANASUI by grabbing onto him, but of course, he gets the wrong idea from this, and with her getting close to him and pointing at her tongue to show him like, hey, I can't speak, ANASUI of course thinks that she is asking for a tongue kiss, in which she does the right thing and uppercuts him for this. During this, however, Jolyne realizes at this point that Yo-Yo Ma is an autonomous stand that basically will follow their orders and act really passively while waiting for an opportune time to strike when their backs are turned to it. So Jolyne attempts to show this to ANASUI. Since she is unable to speak, she purposely turns her back from Yo-Yo Ma and towards ANASUI, as her face starts to melt off and she falls to the ground, where she uses her string to write a message to ANASUI that says, "Be all eyes." As ANASUI tells Yo-Yo Ma to move away from Jolyne, its acid saliva sprays onto ANASUI's skin. And Yo-Yo Ma actually tells ANASUI that it's set to kill not only Jolyne, but anybody helping her. ANASUI, realizing that Yo-Yo Ma is basically their servant, continues to command the stand and actually tells it to go to the boat's controls and put it on max speed. However, before Yo-Yo Ma reaches the controls, it starts to eat a few insects that it had in its pockets when the attacks suddenly just stop against Jolyne and ANASUI, when it's revealed that ANASUI had used his diver down to successfully basically neutralize Yo-Yo Ma by fusing its brain with a frog. And in one of the most bizarre ways I've seen a JoJo stand fight end, this fight is concluded by Yo-Yo Ma successfully being turned into the brain of a frog and just jumping around and basically being rendered defenseless and useless. While this is going on, we cut to the prison where Foo Fighters goes looking for DNG, where she sees him surrounded by a few prison guards who have found him, and she gets ready to shoot him when out of the corner of her eyes she sees Pucci lurking behind the wall. Pucci counts prime numbers in his head to remain focused as he watches DNG get carried out by the guards, when he suddenly pops out from the corner saying that this is fantastic, it finally begun, as he prances by a disfigured Cujoh, who is actually at this point just dead. And he picks up a disc as Pucci says he's going to obtain the way to heaven and celebrate the dawning of the new world, as he places the disc into Cujoh's dead body, causing it to now start to sing out praise and worship songs, which, although I'm sure that this is like a beautiful message to sing the praises of the first stand user. That's a Steel Ball Run reference, by the way. I just gotta say, having a dead body sing like this, I just imagine this probably sounds horrible. Around the corner, a guard carries DNG on a stretcher to an ambulance van when Pucci notices that one of the guards is actually a disguised Foo Fighters, who starts to close the door behind her, getting ready to shoot DNG to end him once and for all, but not before Pucci implants a disc inside another guard, causing him to now stop Foo Fighters just before her shots come out, saving DNG. But with this happening, Foo Fighters sees the disc half in this guard's head, and it makes her aware that Whitesnake must be nearby, where Pucci now slowly walks out from the shadows, continuing to count prime numbers, which holy aura farming, bro. Pucci tells Foo Fighters that if she's trying to kill DNG, that must mean that Yo-Yo Ma is doing his job of attacking Jolyne, and if that's the case, then he asks Foo Fighters what is her main priority, killing Pucci or stopping DNG and saving Jolyne. We get a quick cut here to kind of show some character development in Foo Fighters as she thinks about this decision and reminisces about her time with Jolyne, where it says that what Foo Fighters fears most is the eradication of her own intellect, and that Foo Fighters has a clear memory of everything that she has experienced since she met Jolyne. Almost a picture-perfect memory of everything around the prison, her talks with Jolyne, all of the fun that she had with her, but everything before the incident at the farmlands with Jolyne is just that she was blindly following orders to protect Whitesnake's disc. She thinks about Jolyne and how Jolyne has put herself in danger for the sake of others, and she's risked her life for people like Hermes, which makes Foo Fighters think about how that must be because Jolyne has shared good memories with them, so that must be what drives human beings, and that memories give a person courage even all the way down to a cellular level, but to Foo Fighters, that is what her intellect is. We cut back to Pucci asking her the question, what is she going to prioritize, taking out Pucci or having to take out DNG to save Jolyne? With Foo Fighters having no time to think about it and having to trust her instinct alone, she turns towards DNG getting ready to fight as Whitesnake comes closer behind her ready to attack. Foo Fighters fires a shot at DNG, but it's blocked by Whitesnake, only making it graze DNG's cheek as Whitesnake lands a karate chop on Foo Fighters' head, splitting it open and revealing her stand disc, with Whitesnake saying that he is the one that gave her this power, as he grabs onto it saying that he is now going to take it back from her. Foo Fighters, with no other option, turns the gun on herself, firing a shot at herself as she continues to think about Jolyne and her memories. But in doing this, when the shot hits herself, her plankton body fluids land all over DNG, now going inside of him, as his body then explodes from Foo Fighters going into his body, now successfully defeating DNG, but at the same time, Foo Fighters' main body lays on the ground as her true plankton body heads towards the driver's seat of the van to escape. Pucci yells out to Whitesnake to capture Foo Fighters and read her memory disc immediately, as Foo Fighters thinks to herself that she has to get to Jolyne to tell her who Whitesnake really is, as she has now realized that the stand user is Pucci. However, before she can get to Jolyne, Foo Fighters has a problem that she is now running out of water. Now, keep this part in mind because we're going to cut back to Jolyne and ANASUI as these two things will link up once again. When we go back in the swamp and Yo-Yo Ma suddenly fades away as DNG has been defeated, leaving only behind the green baby embryo, except the embryo shell is now broken as they see a hand start to reach out of it, climbing onto the boat before it slips and falls into the water. ANASUI goes to grab it to save it, but as he goes to grip its hand, it leaves behind a searing mark on ANASUI, making him realize that this thing must have a consciousness and a mind of its own. And with this, the plant mutation has finally left Jolyne as well, with her and ANASUI trying to chase after the baby as it falls into the swamp, when they suddenly notice that things around them just look a little bigger than they used to be, as they see a rock now just looks super huge compared to them, realizing that this green baby's stand power has shrunk them to half of their size. But in that, as they try and reach the baby, it makes the distance between them and the baby basically double, so that as they try and run after it, it's going to get harder and harder to get closer to it. Jolyne does her Jolyne type of thing here, and she just rushes towards the baby, and although the distance is getting greater, she just unravels her body into string to close the distance, but even that doesn't work. So she just attempts this method again, but this time from a different angle. But as she sends her string out again, the baby's automatic stand, which named is Green Grass of Home, appears on her string, tugging on it, causing Jolyne to fall down at the same time that she is also getting farther away from the baby. And with that, the stand also starts to increase in its size, now being very huge compared to Jolyne. Jolyne attempts to fight the stand with her stone free, shooting a string net at it and attempting to punch it, but Green Grass Baby grabs onto her leg, pulling her to the ground and causing her leg to shrivel up, as it's essentially trying to erase her body as it gets closer to what's considered the 0 point. And I only mentioned the 0 point here to show you that even Fortnite is a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure reference. Moving on. ANASUI rushes in with a steel diver to save his waifu Jolyne as he hits Green Grass away and saves her, saying that they need to get back to the boat. Green Grass, however, becomes much more aggressive and starts throwing rocks at them, causing a rock slide on the ground that they're standing on. And since they're super small at this point, Jolyne and ANASUI realize that they only have one thing to do here. And they do the Joseph Joestar and they just run away, both using their stands to punch all of the rock shards out of the air. However, this was all according to ANASUI's plan, as he tells Jolyne that they may not be able to catch up to the baby, but they can capture this stand. And at this point, the stand is way bigger than them and is basically towering above them, as it's been continuing to manipulate its size, but it's walked right into their trap, as it bumps into a weird ceiling. ANASUI tells Jolyne to look up, when it's revealed that what they've been running towards this whole time was actually a glass bottle that ANASUI had from their boat, as they run into the bottle neck, now trapping the stand inside of it. And with Green Grass being huge and unable to get back out, it just starts rampaging inside the bottle, attempting to attack them. but ANASUI has already phased his diver down into the walls of the bottle, and since they're much smaller than it, they're now able to run out of the bottle's neck, leaving the stand trapped inside of it, as they use diver down to close the cap on the bottle, leaving the stand permanently stuck inside. The green baby grabs the bottle, but being a baby, it doesn't know how to open it. However, it's not over yet, as green grass uses the glass bottle as basically a hamster wheel, running inside of it, now causing the bottle to roll towards ANASUI and Jolyne, almost running them over, as they're forced to run away yet again. And as it continues to roll, the bottle ends up crushing ANASUI's legs, with Jolyne countering the bottle with her stone free, which causes it to crack. As she punches the bottle, however, the sand suddenly just goes away, as Jolyne suddenly feels something poke her back as she turns around, seeing that both her and ANASUI are now just suddenly back to normal size, as the baby starts to crawl on top of Jolyne's back, looking at her star birthmark and being very intrigued by it. Now keep this part in mind, because we're now going to go back to Foo Fighters, who is luckily still alive but desperately needing water. Foo Fighters goes to turn on the ambulance van, but Whitesnake grabs her hand, bursting through the dashboard. And one thing I just have to point out here is that Foo Fighters is in her original plankton form, but is also now taking the shape of the prisoner's body who she had taken over, which just looks very interesting and cool. Whitesnake grabs Foo Fighters' arm, cutting it off and hitting her head again, ejecting the disc, with Foo Fighters firing off several shots from its severed arm, which bursts through the ambulance's door, allowing her to slip out. But at this point, she's taken so much damage, and without any water, only her upper half remains. Pucci stands on the other side of the gate, asking Foo Fighters what she saw in the punishment ward, and asking her about the baby that was born, asking if it was beautiful and if it was like a plant. Foo Fighters, of course, won't tell him, but Whitesnake says that that's alright because he can just easily read her mind, and says it's impossible to kill whatever was born, that really no one can possibly kill it, but instead of it dying, he's actually just more afraid of Jolyne losing it more than anything, and that only the person who has Jotaro's memories will have the ability to control this baby, which we know that person is Pucci. Foo Fighters, however, has actually been stalling Whitesnake this whole time, as her lower half was actually still intact as it starts to run away, with Pucci recognizing this and yelling out to Whitesnake to look behind. Foo Fighters says that they did it, that the distraction actually worked, and that the brain behind Foo Fighters was not in the upper half that Whitesnake was focused on, it was actually in the lower half, as her upper half starts to fade away, with her lower half having run through the gate towards a faucet outside of the security ward, as she turns it on, successfully being able to use the water to start regenerating herself, as she says that she needs to get to Jolyne to tell her everything that she's learned. However, say it with me, things are never that simple in the JoJo series, because as Foo Fighters regenerates, Whitesnake yells out that she's just a smug plankton scum that doesn't have the right to give him lectures, as the faucet was not just water, but actually boiling hot water, as it shoots out from the faucet, burning Foo Fighters' plankton, as it's too hot for her plankton body to handle, causing Foo Fighters to burn and bubble as Foo Fighters fades away, leaving only behind her stand disc, as Whitesnake and Pucci watch on, saying that there are no obstacles left now, and that all he has to do is to go find Jolyne to get the memory disc. Which, man, rest in peace, Foo Fighters. I hope that Jolyne knows how much she truly changed Foo Fighters' life and how much she looked up to Jolyne. Pucci tells Whitesnake that they have to hurry and retrieve Foo Fighters' disc, and that he fears that he might lose whatever was born to Jolyne. Whitesnake goes to pick up the disc, but he hears a radio on the ground start to buzz, hearing a voice in the radio asking if Foo Fighters had called them and asking what's going on in the punishment ward, and then it starts telling Foo Fighters to answer the radio. Whitesnake picks up the radio as whoever is on the line says that they just left the infirmary, as Whitesnake realizes that this voice is actually coming from Weather Report, as a storm now brews overhead, and rain starts to come down around the location of the security ward. And with it now raining, you thought that Foo Fighters was completely dead? Well, not yet, because Foo Fighters is revived, as there was just a small piece of her plankton left near the stand disc, and with that, she's able to start regenerating and crawling away using the water from the rain, as Whitesnake yells out, cussing at her, saying that he can't let her get away, attempting to reach after her, but the rain is so heavy and pouring down that he can't see anything, at the same time that a thick fog also starts to roll in, with Whitesnake losing sight of Foo Fighters. And this next part is actually a 300 IQ play by Foo Fighters, because Pucci hears the rhythm of Foo Fighters running away, realizing that she's actually running in a rhythm of Morse code to send a message to Weather Report through the sound of her footsteps in the rain. And with this code, Foo Fighters is able to tell Weather Report to make the fog thicker, and that Whitesnake's identity is the stand of Pucci. The mist begins to clear as Whitesnake has lost sight of Foo Fighters, with Foo Fighters crawling away meeting up with Weather Report, who has finally arrived. Pucci looks at this while he's still trapped in the gates of the punishment ward, and he's just insanely stressed and begins to count prime numbers again, as he basically starts yapping to himself that although Weather Report knows the identity of the user of Whitesnake, Jolyne still doesn't, so nothing really has changed yet, and that the victor is ultimately the one that's in possession of whatever was born. Which technically is Jolyne right now, but anyways. Now cutting back to Jolyne and ANASUI, they look behind them seeing a fog coming around the prison ward, and although the baby Stan was just trying to kill them, they're just now cool with the baby as it's wrapped around Jolyne's shoulder like a Pokemon or something. But with Jolyne having just gone through all of this, she asked ANASUI a pretty valid question. Why is he doing all of this for her? Finding Whitesnake and finding her father's disc are Jolyne's concerns, so why is ANASUI helping her? ANASUI responds by touching her face, saying that she knows how he feels about her and he just has so many feelings about her, and he actually tells her that he was once married in this prison before, asking her if she wants to hear this story. But that's cut short and interrupted by the baby grabbing onto his hair, cutting the conversation as he shakes the baby off. Their spider senses then start to tingle as they sense something coming, and ANASUI grabs Jolyne ducking to the ground as a mist starts to settle over them, as they hear a voice call out to Jolyne saying that they have found out who Whitesnake is. When Foo Fighters approaches them, finally being able to meet up with Jolyne and tell her what she's been trying to so hard to reveal to Jolyne that Pucci is the user of Whitesnake and that he had attacked Foo Fighters, but she was narrowly saved by Weather Report as he also arrives alongside Foo Fighters. Jolyne, relieved to see both of them, asks Weather Report if he's been fully healed as she goes to hug him, with ANASUI looking at this like, what the heck is this? As he gets upset, telling Foo Fighters to separate them immediately. But Foo Fighter tells him like, chill out, that's not important, we got a lot bigger things to worry about right now. ANASUI tells Jolyne that they only needed the baby to lure Whitesnake's user, but since they now know who that is, they don't need the baby anymore, so he actually proposes that they kill it since they have no idea what it might be capable of as it can turn into an enemy. Jolyne tries to stop him, telling him that the baby is their ally, but ANASUI snaps back saying it's not even a human and it was a mistake that this thing was born. It's less than an animal, so they should just dispose of it. Foo Fighters hears this and she gets angry at ANASUI, saying, hey, it sounds like you're talking about me too, but ANASUI smacks her hand off of him, yelling at Foo Fighters that now's not the time, Plankton. And with everyone now against him, ANASUI turns to Weather Report and asks him if he understands and will agree with him. Weather Report, however, responds no, he can't kill the baby, because it's actually you that will be the one dying, as Weather Report pierces his hand through ANASUI's chest, revealing himself to actually be Whitesnake in disguise. Yes, what a twist this is. I actually didn't see this coming, but Whitesnake pierces ANASUI at the same time that he hits Foo Fighters once again, ejecting her disc, with Jolyne just looking at this in shock and summoning her stone free to block another attack from Whitesnake, but she gets thrown back, also cutting off her hand. Whitesnake fully reveals himself and thanks Foo Fighters for bringing him here, saying he was able to come here before Weather Report arrived, dropping ANASUI to the ground as he looks at the baby, saying that he has found the way to go to heaven, as Pucci also reveals himself having hidden in the grass nearby, of course counting prime numbers. Pucci says that he is going to revive Dio and use his powers to his benefit, but before doing that, he'll have to defeat Jolyne, stepping on her severed hand from Whitesnake's attack, using Whitesnake to attack her, but Jolyne uses her string connected to her severed hand to wrap around Pucci's arm, using it to create handcuffs to link both her and Pucci together as they begin to start to fight and box with each other as they exchange several blows back and forth while they are handcuffed together. They continue just punching and kicking back and forth, with Whitesnake attempting to intervene, but Jolyne at the same time counters that with her stone free. So we have Jolyne boxing with Pucci at the same time that their stands to the side of them are also fighting at the same time. Like, how cool of a moment is this? Since Jolyne has control over the handcuffs with them being her string, she uses it to pierce into Pucci's hand, telling Pucci that he is actually at a disadvantage as he's not used to being handcuffed. But Jolyne has been in handcuffs every day since she's been in this prison, just as Pucci had intended for her to be, so she has the upper hand. Jolyne tells Pucci that she knows that Whitesnake is a long distance stand, and with them being so close together, that means that Pucci can't use his stand to his full power, but with Jolyne, she has a close range stand, so she can use 100% of her speed and power to outmatch Pucci's stand. However, since she is technically touching Pucci since they are both linked with her handcuffs of string, Pucci is able to use Whitesnake's power to start to eject her stone free in the form of a disc, as he reaches out saying that all he has to do is grab this disc, and with them being so close, he is close to doing so. But before he is able to, he feels a sudden breeze and hears some leaves rustling as Jolyne tells him that he has totally lost to her. Keep this in mind, we're gonna get a really quick backstory here of seeing Dio and Pucci once again as they are actually lounging in a bed together, which I just gotta say, Dio is an adult, Pucci is like 16 years old here, which yes, they're laying apart from each other on the bed, but like, this has gotta be at least a little weird, right? Anyways, they lounge in this bed in a flashback with Pucci reading a book, and Dio says that he saw a concert of Michael Jackson on TV the other day, which I only bring up to say the thought of Dio watching TV, watching Michael Jackson is just so insane. But anyways, Dio grabs Pucci's arm, asking him if Pucci will betray him someday, saying that Pucci already knows that Dio's weakness is sunlight, so that Dio sleeps all day, so it would be easy to kill him in his sleep and take his stand. Pucci, however, says that he's never thought of doing that, and he starts glazing Dio like always, saying that he's the king of kings and he loves him as much as he loves God, which like, holy glaze. But anyways, Dio apologizes for insulting him and hands him a bone that he rips out of his body as a token of apology, which, just keep this bone in mind, we'll get back to that really shortly. Now back to the fight, Jolyne and Pucci square off once again, attacking each other with their stands, but Pucci uses a cross that he stuck under his nails to get an extended reach to strike Jolyne, causing the disc to almost pop out of her head and starts to cover her eyes, basically blinding her. But Stone Free counters with a punch to Pucci's chest as Jolyne hits him with an aura barrage. But despite being hit, Pucci manages to nearly grab Jotaro's memory disc, which he had dropped down while Jolyne was being distracted and hitting him as he throws it to the side. Jolyne sees this, but she can't really tell what he just threw as she starts yelling at him to tell her what he just threw away. Pucci responds by talking as cryptic as he always does, saying a disc is the embodiment of the soul, but he says that if a disc were to enter the body of a dying person, that disc would perish along with that person, as he takes Jotaro's memory disc and puts it inside of ANASUI, who is still bleeding out on the ground and almost dead, meaning that if ANASUI dies, Jotaro's memory disc would also fade away with it. Pucci tells Jolyne that she has a choice similar to the situation that he had put Foo Fighters in. Is she going to retrieve her father's disc, or is she going to continue fighting him? As Pucci thinks to himself that he knows that this is a risk to throw Jotaro's memory disc away, but since he's already read the memories, he already remembers it, so he doesn't really need the disc anymore. As ANASUI at this moment is starting to slowly bleed out, the disc also starts to fade away, with Jolyne realizing that if the disc fades, then so will her father Jotaro's life as well. Jolyne, faced with this choice, summons her Stone Free to hit Pucci with an aura punch, hitting him back and breaking the string handcuffs as she rushes towards ANASUI, as Pucci exclaims that he wins and he knew that she would choose her father over fighting him. And then Pucci starts reciting a few strange terms. Pucci starts muttering to himself, spiral staircase, rhinoceros beetle, a ghost town, a pear tart, via doloroso, singularity point, angels, the secret emperor, and while saying these words, he reaches out towards the green baby, using Whitesnake to pierce his hand and bring out Dio's bone, handing it towards the green baby, with the baby grabbing onto the bone as well as Pucci's arm, pulling Pucci into the grass to fuse with him, as Pucci exclaims that he can now finally enter into Dio's world. Jolyne attempts to take Jotaro's disc out of Anasui's dying body, but it's almost completely entered into him and faded away, as Jolyne looks around defeated, calling out for just anyone to help, even a guard or a doctor, just shouting out for anyone to come near. Anasui, with barely any strength left, uses his diver down, being barely able to summon it, but with this, he's able to communicate with Foo Fighters, who is also almost completely deteriorated as well, as Anasui realizes that he is on the brink of death as his heart has already stopped and he's starting to feel really cold. With his little bit of life left, he asks Foo Fighters to take over his body, saying that they made a promise to each other and he doesn't care what she does with his body, but to just take it over. Jolyne looks behind her and she sees the spirit of Foo Fighters appear out of Anasui's body and tells Jolyne not to worry. Anasui got the disc back, showing that Jotaro's disc has now left his body. Foo Fighters tells Jolyne that she was most scared of not being able to say goodbye to her friends, and that she actually forgot how to say goodbye, but at the very end, she remembered that she has to be the one to say it. She continues telling Jolyne that when Anasui wakes up, to tell him that his body is his own, and that Foo Fighters used his intelligence and his strength to go into his body and heal his wounds, before telling Jolyne that she must go and her time is now up. Jolyne tries to reach out towards her friend of Foo Fighters, saying that she's gonna get her disc back from Pucci and make her come back. But Foo Fighters says that if Jolyne were to do that, it might be a different version of Foo Fighters, not her true self. But this right now, this is her, and she is saying goodbye. And she says that she is glad that she was able to say her goodbyes before Foo Fighters' spirit disappears, which this time is actually real, which rest in peace to Foo Fighters. Man, JoJo's has too many sad character deaths. Foo Fighters was actually the GOAT, and she gave everything she had for Jolyne. I will be missing her as we continue on. With Foo Fighters now gone, Anasui is healed but still unconscious, as Jolyne looks around and hears a radio nearby buzz of weather report asking for Foo Fighters to answer. We then get a small time skip, seeing a now transformed Pucci having fused with the baby as he goes to the prison's front desk, actually signing a document to be able to leave, where we get a better shot of this transformed Pucci, seeing that he now also has the Joestar mark as well as engravings all over his body, and also a new hairstyle, of course. Pucci says that he is leaving the prison as he has no more use for it anymore, as the child is already in his possession and all he has to do now is just wait for heaven. We then get another flashback which reveals Dio's complete plan on how to obtain heaven. The first thing you would actually need is Dio stand the world. And we see that Dio says that Pucci was actually the perfect candidate for obtaining heaven, as to obtain heaven, you would need someone who chooses the will of God before the laws of human, kind of like a priest does, which is like Pucci. Then you need the lives of 36 humans who have sinned, which by the way, there was 36 people in total that had died in the prison ward. And then you need to remember these 14 phrases: a secret emperor, spiral staircase, rhinoceros beetle, pear tart, rhinoceros beetle again, a ghost town, Giotto, rhinoceros beetle yet again, singularity point, hydrangea, angel, Via Doloroso, and rhinoceros beetle again. Then you will also need the courage to then destroy Dio's stand, in which it will then absorb the souls of the 36 sinners, and in that it will give birth to something new, which is the green baby. And what is born will give interest into these 14 phrases, and then you will fuse together with it. Lastly, you need to go to these exact coordinates, which lead you to the coast of Florida, and then you just have to wait for the new moon. Maybe while you're waiting, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel Talking, but after you wait a little bit, then heaven will come. Back to the prison now. With what happened in the security ward, the prison is now on security level 4 and basically on high alert, as all of the guards are now armed with guns and just patrolling around constantly. Emporio calls out to Jolyne's cell, telling her that Pucci has left the prison, and just look at this panel. Jolyne looks sick here, as she also says that she gave herself a navel ring because she was bored, which, like, Pretty cool. It looks good, Jolyne. Jolyne asks Emporio if he brought Jotaro's memory disk, which he confirms that he did, with Jolyne saying that she is going to escape this prison, asking Emporio to show her the quickest way out. Jolyne says that she's going to call the Speedwagon Foundation, but at this point, this is more than just retrieving her father's disc. At this point, the beef against Pucci is personal, as Jolyne says that if Foo Fighters was still alive, she would already be following after him, and after reading Jotaro's memory disk, Jolyne now realizes what Pucci has been after and also why Jotaro decided to seal Dio's stand ability, and that she, Jolyne Cujoh, will have to seal whatever Pucci has just obtained. Jolyne asks Emporio if he plans on staying here or if he will leave with her, but he is just very nervous and scared about the whole situation, as he says that nobody has ever been able to escape this prison no matter how strong of a stand ability they might have, unless you can stop time, that is. Which is unfortunate that Jotaro isn't here, but anyways, he tells her that the prison actually has one true guard that must have some sort of an ability to stop people from using their stand powers to escape. They both hear footsteps coming, causing Emporio to quickly hide into his ghost room as Jolyne looks up, seeing a woman just walking casually with her stand out, who looks very similar to the girl we saw in the very start of the series in chapter 1, but according to the wiki, this is a different girl. I don't know if she's supposed to be like the same person or not, or maybe if this is a retcon by Araki, but anyways, this girl walks up to Jolyne's cell saying that she is actually delivering a message from Whitesnake, as Whitesnake told her to tell Jolyne to not even think about escaping, that it's all over, and if she complies, he will actually make sure that no one will get in the way of her getting her father's disc out of prison. Jolyne just looks at her like, you gotta have some guts just saying that to me, as the girl reveals herself as Miu Miu, who I'm just gonna refer to as Miu to keep it simple, but she reveals herself with her stand, Jailhouse Rock, that she has, showing it to Jolyne as a warning. Jolyne does exactly what you have already known her to do when faced with the problem. She summons her stone free punching Miu, but before the attack connects, the bars start to bend around as Miu tells Jolyne again, I'll warn you one last time, don't touch these bars, and the more that you think about escaping, the closer that you will come to death. Jolyne does her Jolyne thing and attempts to punch her again, when then she just suddenly wakes up in her normal cell back in the women's prison from the very start, with GWESS on the top bunk, confused and asking if she's okay. But this time, Jolyne has writings on her hand saying, 1. Take the pen quickly. 2. Assume that you can only learn 3 new things at a time. And 3. Defeat the stand user. Her name is Miu Miu. Jolyne takes off her jacket and also sees on her arm it says 4. Go meet Emporio. Now with this arc and stand fight, we are in a JoJo part where we are faced with the manga famous amnesia plotline, as Jolyne now has amnesia, trying to figure out what just happened. GWESS takes out a paper from her pocket that says that Jolyne has been in a state of shock from the incidents in the punishment ward, and that she has now lost all of her memories, and that she can only learn 3 new pieces of information at a time. Jolyne looks all over her body and she sees on her waistline that she has another thing that she has to remember. Don't forget to wear your panties. Realizing that yes, she did forget and she has to go put them on right now. Jolyne asks GWESS, where is this Miu person, with GWESS pointing outside and saying that Miu is actually just standing right outside her cell. As Jolyne leaves the cell, she has already forgotten this piece of information, as she then reads her message on her arm that says to go find Emporio, where we see that Emporio is also trapped as well and under the effect of the same stand power, and he's in his ghost room having spilled water on the ground near a socket with writing on his arm that says that he needs to get to Jolyne. But every time he tries to get up to leave the room, the water near the socket just continually electrocutes him each time. So he's just in a cycle of being electrocuted. Jolyne, after reading her arm, realizes that Miu keeps following her and attempts to use her stone free to attack her, but Miu dodges the punch and just runs away. Jolyne chases after her, but as she runs, she starts to forget things again, not knowing where she is at or who she was chasing, when a bunch of guards turn the corner, and with the prison being on security level 4, they just immediately start shooting at her as she is now cornered. But before the guards catch up to her, Jolyne is pulled into Emporio's ghost room, which saves her, But Miyu sees this happen, saying that Jolyne has now led her to finding Emporio as well. Jolyne falls into the ghost room with Emporio still in the cycle of electrocution, but Jolyne is able to pull him to safety as they both realize that they are under attack by the same power, and they compare their written notes on themselves. But through the crack in the wall, Miyu enters into the ghost room, with Emporio realizing that this must be the enemy stand user, as he had a picture of her pulled up on his computer as a reminder. Miyu enters the room saying that she hereby deems Jolyne a prison breaker, pulling out a gun, firing several shots that Jolyne deflects with her stone free. However, Miyu shot 4 times. So that means Jolyne would forget one of the shots and won't be able to remember it, as the first shot actually hits Emporio. Miyu continues firing shots at Jolyne, shooting her whole clip, knowing that Jolyne won't be able to track all of them. But to her surprise, Jolyne is able to use her stand to deflect all of the shots, as Jolyne says that she saw all of the shots in the reflection of the water that was spilled, meaning that would only be one fact, as she shows her forearm in which she had used her string to write in her arm, "Get revenge for Emporio." Miyu, who is all out of bullets, runs away, leaving the ghost room with Jolyne following after her, as Emporio, who is very much hurt from getting shot but still alive, looks at his arm, seeing something written that says "print out." Jolyne chases after Miyu as Miyu radios into the guards where their location is, where Jolyne uses her string to grab onto Miyu's neck, but when Jolyne looks up, she sees that the guards have already arrived, as she then forgets where Miyu is, allowing Miyu and her stand to strike Jolyne. Miyu knocks Jolyne down the stairs with all of the guards arriving at this point, but Emporio in the crack behind Jolyne appears from his ghost room, handing her a printed out paper with a binary code on it. And he tells Jolyne that she can use her stone free to become a portable printer, as this binary system can express everything using the 2 numbers of 0 and 1, meaning that that would only be 2 facts instead of 3. How exactly this works and how exactly stone free is a printer, I'm just gonna say this is a JoJo series, just take it for what it is. Jolyne is able to print out the sequence with her string, seeing it create a face of Miyu, allowing her to remember that she is the enemy stand user, and Miyu, who is thinking that Jolyne can't know this since she has already forgot it, lets her guard down for just a second before Jolyne sees this printout and is able to recognize her, and then she hits her with a barrage of aura punches, successfully defeating Miyu pretty quickly, as she then grabs her body as a hostage and is able to put all of the other guards around them under the same effect, causing them to now lose sight of Jolyne and Emporio, as they have now forgotten about them, allowing both of them to escape and head to the infirmary to heal their wounds. On the way to the infirmary, they also run into Hermes, which, man, it's been such a long time since we last saw her. I'm glad to see her back, but which means that they now have to act quickly, and with Miyu defeated after they are now healed, Jolyne, Emporio, and Hermes are all able to escape the prison successfully, and yeah, they just kind of walk out of the prison at this point just very easily. It's just off screen here. Now moving forward, we see a supermarket where a woman and her baby are shopping. As they leave the supermarket, the baby sees a cross on a hat and tries to reach out for it, making the woman drop her bag as she tries to catch the baby as it falls. When suddenly, the person with the cross catches the baby as the woman looks up and sees that it's Pucci wearing the hat, who manages to catch all of the items that she drops and gives it back to her. However, Pucci doesn't look all that well, as he's actually sweating profusely, as the mother's watch on her wrist starts to accelerate very rapidly, as she looks at her baby, who has half of its body now developed into a fully grown man. Keep this part in mind, the part about the watch and time acceleration will be important much later. Pucci gets in a taxi heading to Orlando, Florida, but for some reason, the car's engine suddenly shuts off and it's unable to start. And as Pucci looks around, he keeps seeing the number 3 on the meter for the taxi, a book of the 3 Musketeers, and a sign saying that he's only 3 miles until Orlando. Pucci gets out of the taxi and decides to just walk the rest of the destination to Cape Carnival, which is the location of the coordinates that were given to him by Dio. But as he passes a nearby hospital, Pucci sees 3 ambulances arriving with 3 patients in critical condition. As he looks at this, a coin, a bullet, and a ring all roll towards him. One of the patients suddenly wakes up from the stretcher and he holds Pucci hostage with a pair of scissors. Pucci, now understanding the meaning of the number 3, actually stabs himself with the scissors, shocking all of the hospital workers. The guy holding him hostage tries to flee away from this, but he's shot by a nearby police officer. However, a stick figure from a traffic sign literally detaches itself and begins to drag the man to safety, where we see that this man has a Joestar birthmark, which, yes, you heard that right, this guy has a Joestar birthmark. More on that shortly. Now back in the prison, Weather Report is able to sense through the air currents that Jolyne has escaped. As ANASUI goes to grab his shoulder, now noticing that Weather Report also has a Joestar birthmark on his back as well. As Weather Report says that he is going to escape as well to go after Pucci, and then this is also off screen that Weather Report and ANASUI escape. Yeah, I guess it's just like super easy to break out of this prison now. They just, I guess, just walk out. I don't really know. We then cut to 3 days later, seeing ANASUI and Weather Report hiding in a public restroom from police cars outside, since they're now fugitives as they have escaped the prison. ANASUI brings up Weather Report's star birthmark again, saying that Jolyne had the same mark and also the green baby had it as well, as he asked Weather Report why he was even at the prison and why Whitesnake would specifically take Weather Report's memory but allow him to live. Weather Report responds to this by saying that all he knows is that Pucci is his enemy, but obviously he doesn't have any other memories than that, so he doesn't know how he ended up in the prison. Nearby, an old man drops his groceries on the ground, which they help him pick up, and then as a thank you, the old man lets them hitch a ride in the back of his truck bed, allowing them to escape all of the police outside, where we see that with the old man's help, they have now arrived to Orlando. While they are riding in the truck bed, they start looking through a few Orlando guidebooks, noticing that some things just look off. And then as they're looking at a billboard they pass, they notice that different characters are missing from them, like Mickey Mouse and Pinocchio. They hear something then rustling behind a box in the truck bed, which ANASUI uses his diver down to go through the box to grab whatever it is, as it comes back and he has now picked up Pinocchio. Like literally, the Pinocchio. Realizing that these fictional characters from the works of arts around them are now coming to life as a result of a stand ability. ANASUI grabs Pinocchio, asking who the heck he is, with Pinocchio saying that he shouldn't hit him because if he were to, all of the children around the world would be sad. Which I just gotta say right now, this arc is gonna be insanely bizarre of JoJo characters fighting cartoon characters, which this concept alone is just, it blows my mind. It's so much fun to read. ANASUI asks Pinocchio if he's the only one on this truck, with Pinocchio saying no, causing his nose to grow, hitting ANASUI's face as he's obviously lying. Out of another box, they then see an apple rolling away, then seeing Snow White and the 7 dwarves come out of it. When inside the truck, they also hear a radio news report saying that suddenly Mickey Mouse has disappeared from all paintings and drawings all over the world. ANASUI goes to alert Weather Report, but Weather Report doesn't respond to anything that he's saying. Weather Report then calls out for ANASUI, asking where he is and looking all around the truck, as he looks over the edge of the truck bed, shouting at the driver to stop the truck immediately, as ANASUI also looks over the edge as well to see his own body stuck under the wheels of the truck. ANASUI attempts to save his own body with his steel diver, as Weather Report attempts to get the truck driver to stop the truck, seeing that the truck driver is now also separated and not actually driving the truck, causing the truck to veer off the side of the road and crash into a pole, with Weather Report only being able to save both himself and ANASUI by forming clouds to act as airbags as they cushion and fall to the ground. ANASUI's body is still separated, as the dwarves point up that they now see things flying overhead of Astro Boy, Gigantor, and Mazinger Z, all flying overhead, which again, this is literally just so insane to see in the JoJo part. ANASUI's separated body starts to interrogate Pinocchio, with Pinocchio saying that he is the work of a stand named Bohemian Rhapsody, whose ability is to separate people's souls from their body. ANASUI uses his steel diver to punch Pinocchio, destroying him, and with destroying Pinocchio, this now causes ANASUI's soul to now go back to his body as he's now reunited as one. ANASUI and Weather Report speak to each other as they plan to find the user and defeat them instead of hunting down each one of these characters, when the truck driver from the crash then crawls towards them, morphing into the big bad wolf and attacking ANASUI, biting onto his shoulder. ANASUI is able to use his steel diver to cut the big bad wolf's head off, but since he was attacked by it and he was touched by the stand, By the time he looks up, he sees that he's been separated once again from his body as he sees his main body and weather report on a bus leaving the scene. The bus heads into the city as ANASUI's separated body now runs throughout the city, running after the bus as people are doing things like climbing a ladder to shake Spider-Man's hand. You know, normal day-to-day activities for the Jojo World, or rather, I guess like a normal day in Florida. But as he chases his double through the town, a shop owner calls the cops on him, who surprisingly responds pretty quickly. While this is going on, Weather Report's body has now been separated as well, as he sees Vincent van Gogh's last self-portrait, which forces Weather Report to go with him and relive Van Gogh's life, meaning that he would now be fated to cut off his ear and then shoot himself in the head. With this, Weather Report has to stop this attack before it gets to that point, as he plans to find the stand user behind this to put a stop to this once and for all, when his Joestar senses start to tingle, and from his star birthmark, he can sense that the stand user is moving away very quickly, where up above them, the stand user UNGALO, which is the same person that had held Pucci captive, is on a plane, which Weather Report is able to sense, as UNGALO also has a Joestar birthmark, which like I said, more on that later. Weather Report chases after the plane, but as he is running, he collides with ANASUI, who is also running from several other fictional characters, which triggers Van Gogh's pistol into shooting Weather Report. Weather Report, however, does a 200 IQ play, and to put a stop to this, he literally threatens Vincent van Gogh's last portrait to use his artistic talents to draw them a hero for this story that will put everything back to reality, creating the hero named Putback, whose story can only end once reality is brought back once again. And with the help of this insanely broken power now, on the plane, we see UNGALO notices a girl reading a book of Peter Pan and Tinkerbell, which are now back in their original cover, realizing that his stand Bohemian Rhapsody must have been cancelled, causing him to fall now into a coma and just fall limp as his stand is now defeated. And with this now, every character has returned back to where they came from, and everything is put back to normal, except Pinocchio. He's still out there somewhere, which, man, this was actually one of the most bizarre arcs of JoJo's I've ever read. Also, UNGALO is extremely ugly. Just look at him in the plane. He looks like fish sticks from Fortnite. But if I ever had a stand power, I might choose Bohemian Rhapsody. Maybe Makima could become real then. Anyways, we now go back in time about 8 hours before ANASUI and Weather Report actually escaped prison and that whole arc that we just saw, to where we see what Jolyne and Hermes have been doing this whole time, where we finally get to see what you've probably been hoping for this entire part. Revenge, or somewhat revenge, you'll see. Romeo, yes, Romeo, as in Jolyne's ex from the beginning, arrives home, seeing Jolyne is just casually hanging out in his house, immediately getting flashbacks of the whole car accident, and obviously very shocked to see her not only back but also out of prison. Romeo of course starts to beg to her and ask for forgiveness, but Jolyne just grabs his face, putting her finger to his lips going, "Shh, you don't gotta say anything anymore." The reason that she's actually here is that she needs something, and what she needs is some money and a car. Romeo instantly gives her all of the cash that he has on him, which is $1,000, and also his car keys, as Jolyne tells him to not tell the police or FBI anything if they come looking for her. As Jolyne is leaving, however, she can detect through her string that she implanted into the house to hear Romeo doing just what she told him not to do as he calls the police. But Jolyne of course thought of this, and she had used one of Hermes' stickers that they put on Romeo's tongue from when she told him to be quiet. But before they go to pull the sticker, they listen and hear that Romeo actually called the police saying that he received a call from Jolyne and that she is heading towards Mexico, showing that he actually wasn't betraying Jolyne, but he was actually helping to cover for her. Emporio calls Jolyne and Hermes over, showing that they now have a car and a helicopter that they can use for travel. And Jolyne at this moment does one of the most girl boss things here that she could. Even though Romeo didn't give her up and she realizes that he's a better person than she had thought, she still rips the sticker off of Romeo's tongue before they depart, as they take Romeo's helicopter to fly over to Cape Carnival. We then go to the scene where Pucci was at the hospital, following up where we left off with Pucci in the ambulance, where we see Pucci visit the hospital to meet with 3 people, which were actually the 3 people that were on the stretcher, one of them being UNGALO, as well as the 2 others which are named Rikiel and Donatello, where it's revealed that these 3 people are the sons of Dio. Yes, you heard that right. Dio not only had Giorno, but also these 3 people as well with different mothers, which I just gotta say, Dio must have lowered his standards because these 3 are just kinda ugly. But that also means that yes, these 3 people are technically Joestars as well, which is why they have the birthmark. That's just insane, but anyways. Pucci plots with the 3 of them, telling them that they need to protect him as he heads to Cape Carnival and for them to defeat Jolyne. One of the brothers, Rikiel, speaks with Pucci about his illness that he has, and he asks him to fix one of his eyelids as he can never fully open it. And Rikiel is just really odd and just like a really nervous person. He basically got like 0% of the aura that Dio had, and he constantly has panic attacks and he's always just like sweating profusely. Pucci helps him by inserting a disc into him, telling him that he will now have a hidden ability to control strange flying rod-like organisms called skyfish with his stand named Sky High, now giving him a power, but also now allowing him to open his eyelid properly and not be so weird and nervous. And I'm just gonna add this right here. There's like a whole like few pages on like the backstory of these skyfish and like the fact that they're organisms. It's really not important to the plot of this part, so I just wanted to at least mention that. If you're interested in that, like look up the wiki, but let's move on. In the air above, Emporio, yes, Emporio flies the helicopter instead of the, you know, like 2 other adult women with them. But Jolyne, Hermes, and Emporio head west near Orlando, flying towards Cape Carnival, as Jolyne is able to feel Pucci's presence through her birthmark, but she also says that she has this same sense, feeling that there's 4 people in different places at the same time. Hermes tells Jolyne to close the helicopter's window as she's getting kinda cold, but before she is able to, a gust of wind bursts through and Emporio starts to say that something is wrong as his eyelids are starting to fall down, with the same thing then happening to both Jolyne and Hermes as their eyes start to droop down and also bleed. Hermes notices something flying around, so Jolyne sets up a string trap within the helicopter to hopefully catch whatever it is. But Hermes' hands start to then become bloated, and without being able to sense the enemy, Jolyne tells Emporio and Hermes that they need to just ditch this helicopter as they literally jump out of it mid-flight and letting the helicopter just crash itself. As they are dropping in like a JoJo Battle Royale type of way from the sky, Hermes is able to see the enemy stand as she punches it with her stand, which destroys it, before seeing several other of these same torpedo things slash skyfish following after them. The trio is able to safely land by landing into a river down below, all returning back to their normal state, where Rikiel just casually walks towards them from a motorcycle, which I guess with his stand he at least gained like a little bit of aura here. This moment is actually a really good example of Jolyne's fighting IQ in this part, as she sees Rikiel and obviously can tell that he is the enemy stand user as he approaches them. But not only that, but she says that the only reason that he would approach them is because he must have a close range stand, so that they need to be cautious of getting close to him. Jolyne and Hermes, however, both also have close range stands themselves, which although Jolyne has her strings, I guess that doesn't count as long range, but as they don't have much long range options, they create their own long range option as they pick up rocks and just start throwing it at him. However, the rocks seemingly deflect around Rikiel in mid-air. Rikiel thinks that he's safe, but of course, it's never that simple. Hermes used her stickers on the rocks to duplicate them and return the rocks back to her as they shoot back, hitting Rikiel and landing a massive hit on him. Rikiel starts to panic, and because of this, he loses his control of the flying rods as Jolyne is finally able to see them suspended in mid-air. Rikiel tries to escape and find the keys to his bike at the same time that Hermes' fingers start to become bloated again. Emporio and Jolyne try to figure out what's going on, but Emporio suddenly pees himself. Yes, you heard that right. All of a sudden he pees himself, and not only that, but his pee is bloody. Rikiel turns to Jolyne saying that he's next going to defeat all 3 of them at one time, with Jolyne rushing in to attack these rods with her stone free, but as she runs towards him, a rod flies past her ankle, twisting it backwards, causing her to fall. Emporio, looking at this, all of a sudden feels Jotaro's memory disc that he had hidden on him start to become very hot and imprint onto his body, which causes him to think about this more as he's able to figure out that these rods work by sucking body heat, which then causes different illnesses to different parts of people's organs. And with illness, this causes your body to overheat as well, so Emporio yells at Jolyne to counteract this stand effect by diving into the water to cool her body off. Jolyne, however, does her Jolyne thing and she refuses and actually asks Emporio to give her one of his ghost lighters, lighting her stone-free strings on fire, which then causes her own body to be lit on fire so that Rikiel could no longer be able to manipulate her body heat since her whole body is just heat. I mean, it's on fire now. She then walks menacingly towards him and punches him to the ground, and as she goes to finish him off, Rikiel targets Jolyne's mouth and damages her hypothalamus, causing her vision to now being able to only see after images as she's not able to now see where Rikiel is. Now that Jolyne can't see him, Rikiel goes to finish her off, but Jolyne, who is still on fire by the way, says that if he's attacking her mouth, well then, she doesn't really need to breathe, as she closes her eyes to source out Rikiel by his own presence alone through the power of the star birthmark to be able to locate him and then land several attacks on him, beating him to the ground. Rikiel is on the ground bloodied and nearly dead, as he says that although he lost this fight, it wasn't because of coincidence, but actually it was all fated to happen in order for Pucci to obtain heaven. And then he just drops a bomb on us, saying that Weather Report has the same fate as to bring Pucci closer to heaven, because Weather Report is actually the younger brother of Pucci, which is why Pucci took away his memories. Which, yes, another huge reveal that Weather Report is the brother of Pucci, but just keep that in mind, we're gonna get an arc to explain that a lot more. Hermes at this point just gets tired of hearing Rikiel talk as she finishes him off with their stand, and instead of going to Cape Carnival, they now decide to pursue after Pucci directly. And with this now, our timelines of Jolyne and Hermes, and also ANASUI and Weather Report are all linked up together, as we are now at 3 days until the new moon. Jolyne, Emporio, and Hermes arrive at the hospital that Pucci is hiding within, with Weather Report and ANASUI at the same time also closing in on the hospital, with Weather Report also sensing another person in the hospital besides Pucci. In one of the rooms inside the hospital, Pucci is with Donatello, the last remaining Dio son, and comments to him about how their bodies are very similar as they look each other in the eyes, and I don't know, the tension here is just like really weird to be honest, but Donatello says that he still hasn't been able to figure out what his stand ability is, but Pucci tells him that that actually might be something that they can use to their benefit, but he also tells him to not struggle against things beyond understanding, because to get to heaven, you must ally yourself with those unseeable powers. As they are eating a meal together, suddenly a finger appears from some food that they were eating as Donatello looks down, seeing a face appear in the dish saying that they were shot by their father, when a bullet shoots out from the talking head out of the room, hitting a random civilian in the hallway, which then also startles Jolyne and Hermes, who were nearby looking for Pucci in the hospital halls. Jolyne and Hermes rush into the room that they just saw the bullet fire out of, where they go inside and they now see a giant hole in the center of it, feeling Pucci's presence from within it, as Jolyne grabs a nearby flashlight from within the hospital room, which is just there for some reason, I don't know why, but she shines it inside the hole where they see just a cavern hole, and then a spoon at the bottom that someone used to dig a path inside of it. Jolyne tells Hermes that she can obviously tell that this hole is gonna be a trap, but she also realizes that at this point, they need to find Pucci as soon as possible, and theoretically, he could just hide in this hole for 3 days until the new moon, so they kind of have no choice at this point but to just continue pursuing him no matter where he is. And she also says that right now, Pucci only has his white snake with him, so they actually have a chance to beat him now before he powers up with the new moon. And wasting no time on this, Jolyne rappels down with her string, heading into the tunnel with the string that Hermes holds as a lifeline, with Hermes looking at her like a, come on, really? As Jolyne heads deeper within the tunnel, she suddenly looks up and realizes that she is now on a plane. And not only a plane, but a plane on the date September... Okay, I'm joking. That was a bad joke. I can't even finish it. The date is now July 21st, 2005. So she not only went back in time, but then all of a sudden she's just on a plane. She tugs on her string, yelling at Hermes to hurry and pull her up as she realizes that Donatello might cut this string, leaving her trapped here forever. Jolyne attempts to use the string to pull herself up when it leads her to the top of the plane, where she sees Donatello's stand named Underworld going to cut the string. Jolyne uses a nearby pen that she had from a person on the plane to launch it at the stand, which then causes it to lose its grip on her string and successfully saving her as she drops back down. Hermes attempts to pull Jolyne up from her string, but as she tugs on the string, instead of Jolyne coming up, MAXX comes into view, taunting Hermes about how she had trapped him alive in the sewer in the earlier arc. MAXX tells Hermes that the ground has a memory of everything that happens upon it, kind of like a tape recorder, and that Donatello's stand Underworld can take those memories and excavate them to haunt people. Hermes gets into a fight with this memory of MAXX, causing her to lose her grip of the string, which causes Jolyne to fall back onto the plane. And with that, Hermes loses her balance and actually falls into the hole, leading her to the plane with Jolyne, where a flight attendant just casually walks up to them and tells her that this plane is expected to crash within a few minutes. The flight attendant has like this weird face in it as everyone on the plane and all of the passengers' skin starts to sizzle off as they all start speaking about how they're about to crash. And with limited time, Jolyne decides that the best way out of this is to attack the user Donatello directly instead of trying to figure out and defeat the stand. Jolyne opens up the exit door and has Hermes hold onto her string as she jumps after Donatello and Pucci, which she can see outside of the plane, as she goes to them attempting to punch them. But before her punch connects, it is deflected by a glass type of wall, as Jolyne is now suddenly appearing in a fighter jet now, yelling at Hermes again to pull her up. As the jet flies, a few police officers in the hospital up above investigate the hole in the ground, which Jolyne is able to use her string to steal their radio to call out for Emporio as she yells at him to answer the radio, while she asks the pilot if they can use the eject seat button to get out of here, where the pilot responds just also casually telling her, hey, this jet too is also going to be fated to crash. Emporio finally picks up the radio saying that he is on his way to the hospital, but Jolyne worriedly explains to him the situation that they are in and that they are actually trapped in the past on a plane that's about to crash, and now there's about less than a minute left. When then all of a sudden the jet that she's on then crashes into the plane that Hermes is still on, causing them to be able to reunite with each other. And surprisingly, despite the fact that the jet crashed into the plane, they just, I guess, just tanked this and they just survived this. I don't really know how. Emporio, who's in the middle of a street by the way, pulls out a ghost computer and researches the plane crash, finding out that some people had actually survived this crash. So if Jolyne and Hermes sit in the right seat, they may be able to survive as well. Although those seats are in the way back of the plane at the same time that they see Donatello's Underworld also running to the back of the plane to try and beat them to it. Jolyne and Hermes rush towards the seats as they beat the stand to it, seeing two people sitting there peacefully, and without hesitation, they just grab them and throw them out of the seat when they then notice two children on the seats behind them. And although everyone on this plane is just a memory of the past, they can realize that these two children are actually real and they're hospital patients who were pushed into the situation by Donatello, which I gotta say, that's a pretty evil thing to do. Time is up now and the plane crashes and blows up as Pucci congratulates Donatello for winning, when the old man and the woman who were thrown out of the seats walk up to them with stickers on their face. Donatello looks around terrified, realizing that this must mean that Hermes and Jolyne survived, as Jolyne then comes around the corner with her body unraveling into string as she reorganizes herself, appearing alongside Hermes, as Hermes explains that Jolyne unraveled her body and went inside of Hermes to protect herself against the impact. And yes, they also saved the children too. Donatello attempts to use his underworld to trap them in another illusion, but before it can make contact with the ground, Jolyne strikes him with her stone free, using her string to hang him from the rock ceiling. Pucci looks at Donatello hanging and is like, well, you lost. Jolyne's destiny was just stronger than yours, I guess. Before Jolyne can finish off Donatello, however, we see one of the most bizarre things that happens out of nowhere. Donatello commands his stand Underworld to flee and give weather report back his memory disc, which he had actually obtained by taking it from a memory of Pucci that he had found in the ground. This of course confuses both Jolyne and Hermes as well as Pucci, who is very confused and also surprised to see that Donatello has this as he orders him to give it back. Donatello, however, explains to Jolyne that Weather Report isn't just in prison because he lost his memory, but rather because he doesn't remember how to use his stand to its fullest potential, and that Pucci was hoping to seal him forever to avoid him figuring this out. Pucci is, of course, very angry at hearing this as he's yelling at Donatello, literally calling him a shack made of straw, but before he can stop him, rainbows and clouds fill all over the cavern they're in, where we see Weather Report in the hospital with ANASUI, leaning over a chair with rainbows surrounding him as well, when a patient comes up to him asking him to get out of his seat, when Weather Report looks at him with the face of pure anger and thunderclouds and lightning around his face, telling him to shut up or else he's gonna kill him. And now that he has his memory back, Weather Report is, well, let's just say that angry is an understatement. He is literally just filled with rage. Weather Report is now completely changed as a few hospital workers come up to him telling him that that seat is reserved, with Weather Report grabbing one of the workers, choking him, telling him to shut his mouth before using his power to drown the worker with rain, as ANASUI just looks on in horror asking him what is he doing. Weather Report starts to walk out of the hospital with ANASUI stopping him when Weather Report turns around and he's a little bit confused about his name, saying, "Weather? So my new nickname is Weather Report? Well, I don't dislike it. Anyways, let's go have a little fun," as he says that he wants to go kill his brother, which we now know is Pucci, but ANASUI is confused as he hasn't got that reveal yet. More rainbows appear around this new Weather Report as we cut back into the cavern, with Hermes going to punch Donatello with her stand kiss. But as she goes to punch him, her stand's arm only grazes one of the rainbows in the cavern, which causes Hermes' arm to just burst open. Donatello tells them that this is caused by Weather Report's stand, and that Weather Report actually has the power to not only control the weather, but also destroy the ozone layer, and with that power, he can essentially kill all life on Earth if he wanted to. Pucci, from the shadows in the corner, tells Jolyne that if she wants to live, to not let Donatello get away, as Donatello would be the only one that can make Weather Report stop all of these rainbows, as Weather Report's stand can function unconsciously, and he can basically not be controlled. And the only way to stop this is to either kill Weather Report or to extract his memory again. Although Pucci says Jolyne probably won't be able to kill him, but Donatello should be able to extract the memory disk by unearthing it, and if they don't do that, then everyone will die before they can even reach the new moon. Donatello starts running away with Jolyne launching her string to catch him, but when it wraps around his legs, they see it all of a sudden change as she instead wrapped it around the police officers back in the hospital, as Donatello's stand has now been deactivated. The cavern hole is now no longer there, as there's now just a big hole in the ground, as the police officer's head then suddenly burst open, similar to how Hermes' arm did, with a bunch of snail eggs appearing, hatching into snails, before then affecting the other guard as Jolyne and Hermes see snails crawling all over the hospital. Jolyne attempts to pull Hermes out of the hole, seeing Hermes' arm then also start to turn into that of a snail as she is pulled up and her entire body starts to just fully morph into a snail now. With this going on and seeing that it's now affecting them as well, Hermes asks Jolyne if this means that Weather Report is now their enemy, with Jolyne countering, exclaiming that Weather Report is their friend and they need to get to Donatello to just stop this power, as they attempt to run out, but Hermes collapses to the ground as she continues turning into a snail. Outside of the hospital, Donatello uses his stand to recover a memory of Jolyne and Hermes when they were outside, seeing Jolyne telling Hermes that they need to get Jotaro's memory disk back to the Speedwagon Foundation and that Emporio should be able to handle this, as Donatello hears this and says that he needs to go find this Emporio person and that even Pucci must not know that this guy is helping them. We then cut to Weather Report, who is with ANASUI, and Weather Report is just loving his new power he got back, as some girls come up to him flirting with him, as Weather Report walks off with both of the girls sitting on a bench with his arms wrapped around them so that they can give him a massage, in which he just uses his power to electrocute them, because I don't know why, he just does this. He's a changed man, I guess. And then now we're gonna get a quick flashback of Pucci and Weather Report's backstory to show what this new Weather Report is. We then cut all the way back to a small town in America on June 5th, 1972, where a baby was born. But before the baby could see the light of day, it dies. The young mother is unable to accept this, so she slipped out of her room going into the hospital nursery as she swaps her dead baby out for another baby that is actually a set of a twin, as we see that she leaves behind baby Pucci as she takes baby Weather Report. Pucci then later grows up to go into seminary, and while he's in a church one day cleaning it at the age of 15, he sees some clown shoes in the church. And yes, you guessed it, those clown shoes belong to Dio, as this is the first time that they met. Dio says that he's only in the church because he's allergic to the sunlight, and although Pucci is of course very shocked, he believes Dio, and because of this, Dio hands Pucci a gift of the stand arrow as a thank you for believing him. Dio then tells Pucci that he'll leave once it becomes nighttime as he goes back into the shadows. We then see that his entire life growing up, Pucci had thought that his twin brother, which is named Domenico Pucci, had died at birth. And then we see that Pucci goes to clean the church one day as usual when he starts cleaning the confession box, when a woman comes in saying that she has a confession. This woman has been struck with a disease, but it's not just a disease of sickness, as it's also a disease about family, and she tells through the confession box that 16 years ago, she swapped her dead newborn son with someone else's child at the hospital. She now feels so much guilt about this, but she does say that she tried to raise the baby that she took as best as she can, but she actually lives next to this family that she took the baby from, and the family's name is the Pucci family, with Pucci obviously hearing this in shock. We then cut to seeing Weather Report / Domenico Pucci, which, by the way, for this rest of this part, I will just refer to him as Weather Report to make it easy, although technically his real name is Domenico, but anyways, Weather Report has been living by the name Wes Blue Marine and is now a juice delivery boy. When he's delivering juice at a store, when a girl's bag gets stolen, which he then launches a juice can to take out the attacker and get the girl's bag back, as they then meet each other for the first time, with the girl seeing him and blushing. We then see that it's been 2 months since Pucci heard this confession, as it's been completely stressing him out, and even though he wasn't a priest yet, he still had a duty to protect the privacy of a confession, but the problem about his brother would come to an end before he can even find out the truth. Pucci arrives home one day seeing his sister, who coincidentally happens to be the same girl who Weather Report just met in the diner, as Pucci's sister tells him that she now has a boyfriend, but to not tell their parents. Pucci then learns that the person that his sister fell in love with is Weather Report, as he looks into this, and Pucci feels like there's only one option, as he says that he has to avoid hurting his sister at all costs. Pucci goes to a private detective agency to hire them, saying to not ask any questions, but to make his sister and this Weather Report guy break up. Later on, Perla, who is the name of Pucci's sister, gives Weather Report a goodnight kiss before leaving, but with this being the year 1988, the private detective sees this and thinks to himself about how he did some research, and Weather Report's mom, which is the one who swapped him out by the way, had married a black guy. So that means that although Weather Report looks white, he can say the word. That means that he is the son of a black man. And then you turn the page and, well, I don't want to get demonetized, but let's just say you see a bunch of people wearing Halloween ghost costumes or something like that, as they're all around him with torches and guns, beating Weather Report and taking Perla away. Weather Report was then hung from a tree over a cliff, and Perla was just left there all alone. Later on, she takes Weather Report's body down from the tree, saying that her heart will no longer feel anything, not even the rain, before jumping off the cliff and exiting the game. But unfortunately, she didn't know that Weather Report was still alive, as he had a very faint pulse. As her body is found in the river, Pucci arrives at the scene in shock, wondering why things turned out this way, questioning everything about why he was meant to hear that confession, and why his sister had to meet his brother. Which, yeah, we haven't even brought up the fact that Weather Report and Perla are technically related, or not even technically, they are related, but anyways. Pucci grabs his sister's body, yelling out that he should be the one who's damned, before remembering Dio and how Dio had asked him if he had believed in gravity, as there is a reason that they met each other, before the stand arrow suddenly pierces Pucci's chest as he kept it in his chest pocket, as he gets a vision of Dio saying a lost life can never be regained, but if you want it badly enough, you'll be able to preserve her memory, and that will be Pucci's ability, as we see a cut to also see Weather Report 2 now has a mark of the stand arrow, which, just to explain this to you, essentially the reasoning is, since they're twins, when Pucci got the stand, Weather Report did too. Weather Report is now healed, and he is furious as he pays a visit to the detective who was part of the Halloween Ghost Clan, as he causes the detective's arm to turn into that of a snail and then causes him to shoot himself and exit game. Weather Report now having finished what he needed to, he then goes to the same cliff to jump off of it, but then he is saved by a sudden strong wind. He then tries to drown himself in the lake, but then he is pushed back to the shoreline. Basically, no matter what he does, he can just not log out of the game no matter what. 4 days later now, snails start to rain from the sky from the city that they're in, with Pucci being the only one to realize what this means as he wakes up in the hospital, realizing that since they're twins, since he got a power, so did Weather Report. When Pucci now sets out to kill his own brother, saying afterwards he's then gonna go find Dio, where he then meets up with Weather Report one night as they get into a fight, with Pucci being able to pretty easily land an attack on him using his Whitesnake to steal Weather Report's memories. And that's the end of their backstory, which, man, that was a good backstory and actually really enjoyable to learn about Weather Report. He's actually one of my favorite characters of this part, but we now go back to the present time with Jolyne and Hermes in the hospital, with at this point just snails are all over the place. Hermes is still half snail form as they use Jolyne's string to web around the hospital, kind of like Spider-Man, as they use Hermes' stickers to then create a duplicate glass windshield of a nearby car outside to use that as somewhat of a sled to safely be able to get out of the hospital as it connects back to the car when Hermes rips the sticker off. Meanwhile, outside, Emporio is running away and runs past Donatello, who Donatello then recognizes as he knocks out Emporio and then steals Jotaro's memory disc from him. Jolyne and Hermes are able to steal a car, but not just any car, a manual Porsche 911 of all things. Probably the doctor's car, to be honest, but they drive this cool sports car away before Jolyne begins to now also turn into a snail, which then causes the car to crash, which at this point has to be like the 10th car crash in this part alone. But coincidentally, they crash this car right near Donatello, who is in the middle of robbing Emporio. Donatello hides in the bushes nearby, with Jolyne using her string to pull both her and Hermes towards it, with Jolyne hiding within a pipe since she is now like a half snail, which she then pops out of the pipe and hits Donatello with a stone-free punch, at the same time that Donatello is using his underworld to pull salt from the ground, since salt is effective against snails, as he throws it onto Jolyne. With Jolyne now burning from the salt, Donatello is able to find Jotaro's memory disc and takes it from Emporio before running away. But since he had touched Jolyne when she punched him, the snail effect then goes to him as well, as Donatello now morphs into a snail as he runs away, so that now he basically can't get away. While this is going on, ANASUI is arguing with Weather Report as he asks him what is he doing and what's going on, with Weather Report saying that he has no idea what's going on, this seems to be happening unconsciously, and that he remembers that he can't end game himself, so to stop the power, someone will have to kill him. ANASUI urges him to tell him where Jolyne is at right now, with Weather Report saying that he'll tell him only after he can first settle his score with his brother Pucci, with him suddenly getting the Joestar sense that Pucci is nearby. As they are speaking, suddenly a gust of wind breezes past them, which actually cuts Weather Report's leg off, as Pucci appears on the ground covered in snails, saying that he already knows about Weather Report's ability to control the atmosphere, and when he took his memories back in 1988, he also found out a way to overcome this phenomenon. ANASUI wastes no time and he launches at Pucci with his diver down, with Pucci looking at him just saying, "You touched it. Then it's all over for you," and telling ANASUI he should have just peacefully waited in the prison for his sentence to end instead of trying to attack him. But it's not over yet, as Weather Report jumps up from the ground, having his leg merge with diver down, as ANASUI used his stand to phase inside of Weather Report, with Weather Report punching Pucci back into a car, as Weather Report then walks towards him to finish him off. Pucci, however, takes some broken glass from the car, using it to reflect light back at Weather Report, which seemingly also controls all the snails as they now stop. As Pucci starts explaining things about subliminal messaging, saying that it slips into your consciousness and your unaware mind. But basically with this, he explains that Weather Report's hidden ability is to create a subliminal effect by changing the rays of the sun rays, so that anyone under the influence of this light begins to think that they're transforming into snails. I just have to say this again, don't put too much thought into this power, just take this for what it is. This is a JoJo series, I can't really explain it better than that. While Pucci is explaining this, however, ANASUI just doesn't care and he summons his diver down to attack Pucci, with Pucci instantly countering with his Whitesnake and hitting ANASUI as he goes to deal a finishing blow, when Pucci's foot then suddenly burst open. Pucci looks around and all around them on the ground now, blood spikes start to appear as Weather Report is evaporating his own blood and then freezing using it, which is just another one of his abilities, which then surrounds Pucci as Pucci is actually unable to see them. Pucci says that he anticipated Weather Report to try something like this before using his Whitesnake to pierce ANASUI's head, to use ANASUI's eyes as his own vision to then see these blood spikes, as he finds a safe path for him to escape the area. But as he's so focused on doing this, another spike appears on Pucci's shoulder, piercing his jaw, with Weather Report now getting closer within range. Pucci starts to fall back towards the spikes on the ground, with him attempting to use his Whitesnake to break the blood shards, punching them back towards Weather Report. Weather Report looks at Pucci saying, "I got you," and summons more blood shards as he grabs onto Pucci, while ANASUI is able to tell that Weather Report is now within range to land an attack, as Weather Report uses his stand to land a devastating blow on Pucci as he falls to the ground. Pucci looks at Weather Report saying that he could have killed Weather Report anytime while he was in prison, but he thought that he could save him one day, which is why he only took his memory, but also so that Pucci could attain heaven. Weather Report doesn't listen to this, and he grabs onto Pucci's neck and starts to choke him out as he uses his stand to go and finish him. When you won't guess what happens next. Another car crash happens right next to them, seeing that Jolyne and Hermes kidnap Donatello, making him drive the car, which they are now crashing into the car right by Pucci and Weather Report, where we see outside that Pucci has actually hit Weather Report with Whitesnake, piercing through his chest. Jolyne and Hermes get out of the car, seeing Pucci standing in the mist, with Jolyne, who has a snail chest by the way now. I don't know, I just had to point that out because I don't know why Araki did this specifically, like no other part of her body is a snail aside from this part, but Jolyne wastes no time and unravels herself to hit Pucci with her stone free. But before the punch lands, she actually sees Pucci holding onto Weather Report's body, with his Whitesnake arm having pierced him, saying that at this point, no one will be able to pursue him anymore. But go on guys, just say it with me now. This is a JoJo series, nothing is ever that simple. Because ANASUI uses his diver down to punch Pucci, telling Jolyne that Pucci actually isn't here anymore, as they see several duplicates appear of Pucci and Weather Report appearing, as ANASUI explains that Pucci had used Donatello's power to conjure up this memory of the past as the snails all fade away. And then you look on the ground around the corner, seeing a bloodied Weather Report, as they feel that the wind has now stopped and they realize what has just happened. ANASUI somberly tells Jolyne that it's alright and to not blame herself, as Jolyne thinks to herself that this actually may be her fault because they had crashed the car into them. ANASUI tells Jolyne that Weather Report was already saved and that he came back to life when he left the prison and that he had died happy, and that it was actually Whitesnake that dealt the final blow to him, and in this final moment, Weather Report used Pucci's ability to turn his own stand into a disc, as Jolyne holds onto it, thinking to herself that she just wishes she could speak to Weather Report just one more time, as Hermes is also seen behind the car with tears in her eyes, as both Weather Report and Donatello have now died from this battle. And I'm not going to say rest in peace to Donatello, but rest in peace to Weather Report. And now, with another Jobro sadly defeated, we continue on this story heading towards Cape Canaveral, leading us to the final battle against Pucci. And I will just warn you now, I might pronounce it as Cape Carnival here and there. Please just cut me some slack. I've been editing this video for like a month, but anyways, they drive to Cape Canaveral as they realize that Pucci is probably already there by now. In the car ride, Jolyne lays on ANASUI's chest falling asleep, which he of course just loves this moment as he remembers that he had promised himself that once he got out of prison, he would tell her his true feelings, and he even had spent a bunch of money in the prison to buy a ring, as he starts to slip it on her finger, when Hermes yells out that they see an alligator on the side of the road, which is just a true Florida thing. But this causes Jolyne to wake up seeing the alligator, in which she throws what she has in her hand at the alligator, and that thing she threw was the ring that ANASUI just gave to her, as he yells at her like, "Do you know what you just did?" Yeah, I just thought that part was funny to add in here. Cape Carnival is near the Kennedy Space Center, where we see Pucci arriving at the center as his face starts to seemingly contort, and I don't know how to explain it really, but it kind of like creates a mountain crater on his skin as things around him and different objects begin to all get pulled sideways. Back in the car, they talk about how there's now only 32 hours until the new moon, so we have about 1.5 days left, as Emporio uses his ghost computer while driving, Which again, why is Emporio driving and not, you know, the now 3 adults in the car with him? But anyways, he's able to use his ghost computer and deduce the approximate location of where Pucci would be, as they discuss if they should just wait for the Speedwagon Foundation to come help, or at this point if they should just go straight after Pucci. In the road up ahead as they drive, a bunch of bodies appear rolling on the ground, when then a bunch of cars start to float as they approach the Kennedy Space Center, noticing that the gravity is seemingly shifting around Cape Canaveral, causing the car's engine to stop. And yes, you can guess when there's a car in this part, what's gonna happen. There's a car crash as they crash their car, having to nearly jump out of the car as it's in midair, but as Hermes jumps out last, she is struck by a pillar that is flying due to the low gravity as she falls to the ground. Chaos ensues as everything is flying around and Jolyne is attempting to reach out to Hermes by unraveling herself, with ANASUI yelling at her that if Hermes is still alive, she'll find her way back, as they are running out of time and they need to go pursue after Pucci immediately. Since Jolyne isn't able to reach Hermes, they decide to just continue on at this moment, as Jolyne sees all of this thinking that this is the heaven that Pucci talked about, with Emporio responding to her saying that this is only a preliminary sign and things are only gonna get worse. ANASUI tells Jolyne that Weather Report had actually injured Pucci pretty badly, so they need to find him and put a stop to this immediately, as ANASUI looks at Jolyne, looking at the expression on her face, seeing that she is determined to kill Pucci, but also that she has a deep desire for her father to come help her. But of course, ANASUI also thinks about how he is the only one that can save her, as he wants to encase herself in her arms, and yeah, he's basically just like an ultra simp for her. They head towards the Kennedy Space Center when Jolyne is approached by a humanoid stand that swipes at her, as Jolyne looks at this, recognizing this as the evolution of the green baby from before, where she looks down and she sees her hand get pushed into the ground, how it's now under the effect of increased gravity that's so strong, her hand literally starts to detach from her skin. The stand, named Sea Moon, tells Jolyne that it will eliminate her if she's not willing to wait the additional 2 days, as Jolyne's hand continues to turn inside out as Sea Moon leaps towards her, with Jolyne attempting to counter it with her stone free, but Sea Moon hits a backflip, dodging the attack, flipping around and behind Jolyne to attack her, with Jolyne only narrowly countering Sea Moon's punches with aura punches of her own, knocking Sea Moon back. Sea Moon gets hit back, but then he goes to attack Jolyne, bursting from a truck that she was standing on. And just to explain as well, gravity is just all messed up, so like when I say that she's standing on a truck, it's a truck like hanging off of the side of the building. But anyways, Jolyne dodges the attack as she hits an upper kick on Sea Moon's head, but when this happened, Sea Moon clamps down on her leg with its fist, causing massive damage to her leg as it begins to turn inside out. Jolyne does a 200 IQ play here though, as Emporio and ANASUI are freaking out seeing this. She just says, "Don't worry, if he starts to turn me inside out when he hits me, then she'll just let him hit her again, as it'll just reverse the effect." Truly genius JoJo type of counter here. She's able to patch herself up just enough with her string to continue the fight, as she also realizes that it is possible to cause damage to Sea Moon, so that means that they actually have a chance of winning here. The two continue their fight as Jolyne and Sea Moon continue to box it out with each other, but Jolyne is able to hit him with an Ultra Instinct and dodge every attack, flipping and dodging out of the way. But as she is unable to hit Sea Moon back, she realizes that Sea Moon must not be an automated stand, since automated stands typically have pretty low precision. But with this being so precise with its moves, this must mean that this is instead a remotely controlled stand, which then means that Pucci must be nearby. ANASUI jumps into the fight, attempting to land a sneak attack on Sea Moon with his diver down, but Sea Moon uses the shingles on the wall that they're standing on to detach from that, hitting ANASUI off as he tells ANASUI that he wants to eliminate Jolyne first. However, ANASUI is still in the game, as Jolyne is able to use her string to wrap around an exposed beam to both catch ANASUI and connect the other end of the string around Sea Moon's neck, so that ANASUI is hanging by choking Sea Moon. Jolyne yells out to ANASUI to stay holding onto the string, but Sea Moon is able to narrowly almost touch the string, which would then put Jolyne under the stand effect. Jolyne, however, says she isn't doing this to choke Sea Moon, but rather just to get closer within her attack range. But as she is getting closer, ANASUI yells out to her to deal the finishing blow as quick as she can. Si-moon then touches the steel beam to flip the tiles inside out, giving him just enough room to touch Jolyne's string, which then begins to turn inside out, and also causes damage to Jolyne's arm. But ANASUI comes in clutch, using his diver down to disrupt the effect before it travels down Jolyne's string, as his diver down phases inside of the string to reverse the effect, now turning it back onto Si-moon, causing it to travel back and turn Si-moon inside out instead. ANASUI yells out for Jolyne to finish this off when they hear a voice behind them saying that they knew they should have disposed of Jolyne back in the prison when they first met her. As they all look behind and look up, shocked to see Pucci reveal himself. Pucci starts his cryptic villain type speech saying in order for humans to attain happiness, they have to overcome destiny, but for both Dio and himself, they must instead overcome the Joestar bloodline. That's a pretty hard line for a JoJo villain, but Pucci says that he's only here to save his incomplete stand from Jolyne, with Jolyne doing what you think, punching him with her stone free, but Pucci counters the punch, causing Jolyne to lose her balance and fall off the steel beam she's been standing on. This then allows Si-moon to punch her as she begins to fall down and her body actually starts to turn inside out, as Si-moon and Pucci just casually walk off like, alright, let's head back to the Space Center, saying that Jolyne's heart has now turned inside out and she can no longer do anything to stop this effect, so she's basically rendered useless at this point. Jolyne spits up blood as her whole body begins to turn inside out as she falls down, with ANASUI jumping after her, as EMPORIO, with tears in his eyes, yells out crying for Jolyne, when his phone suddenly rings in his pocket. And despite the situation, he picks up his phone, seeing that he's received a text message. Reading the text as the text person says something about his daughter, making EMPORIO realize who this is coming from, seeing that the text is coming from Jotaro, who is nearby to them, which also makes them realize that with Jotaro texting them, that must mean that Jolyne is still alive, which also means that Pucci must be heading after her, as EMPORIO yells out at ANASUI to find Jolyne immediately and to put an end to Pucci. Pucci chases after Jolyne, where he confronts ANASUI, where they get into a fight, and honestly, Si-moon makes pretty quick work of ANASUI and with just one blow completely destroys him. But say it with me, nothing is ever that simple, as ANASUI had actually used his diver down to change the random visitor's bone structure to just look like him, as ANASUI then appears behind Pucci, striking him with his diver down. But Pucci narrowly uses the gravity effect of Si-moon on himself to turn his head inside out to have the attack miss and just barely graze by him. But now it's Jolyne's turn to come in clutch as she appears, touching ANASUI's face before seemingly vanishing behind a wall leading into a room. Pucci floats into the room using the zero gravity as he goes looking for her, when she then grabs his leg through a vent, but as he goes to attack the vent, she's now behind him, choking him with her stone free. Pucci uses his Si-moon to hit her arms, but instead of it turning her inside out, we see that Jolyne has woven her string into a Mobius strip. Now, I'm not a science teacher, so best way I can explain this is a Mobius strip looks like this and it's infinite since it only has one edge that is just twisted around itself. And with that being said, this means that Jolyne has completely woven her string body into this Mobius strip. And since there's only one string that just loops around itself, it basically can't be turned inside out. Pucci tries to use his Si-moon to hit her brain directly to counteract this, but Jolyne swiftly counteracts each punch with an opposing punch from her stone free. They begin fighting when Pucci takes a gun from a nearby police officer's dead body that was floating around, as he takes the gun firing several shots at Jolyne. But right before they hit, time is now stopped as Jotaro has entered as he moves Jolyne's arm out of the way, and when time resumes, Pucci looks around to see what just happened before being hit by Star Platinum, launching him back. And not only is the GOAT Jotaro here, but the other GOAT, ERMES, is here as well, having used her Kiss sticker power to create a duplicate spear. That way, she can use that spear to return back to herself, to have both herself and Jotaro pull to it, and basically allow them to move around wherever they want, regardless of the gravity power, which is pretty smart. Jotaro appears from the shadows, holding Jolyne in his arms as everyone now surrounds Pucci, who gets hit so hard, he's like twisted into a pretzel in between some steel bars. EMPORIO tells Pucci that this is game over, that he has no more allies and he will never see the new moon. Pucci counters this by saying, "Objection!" Wait, wrong series. I mean, incorrect, EMPORIO. fate is just testing him, but it's still on his side, and the forces that are aiding him is actually the Joestar bloodline, as the Cujoh family is actually Pucci's ally. Pucci then must think that he's in DBZ or something because he just starts flying all of a sudden. Okay, really what happens is he's floating towards the sky with the power of gravity, saying that gravity is now working with him as he is now the center of gravity, as he says that he does not have to wait any more time for this new moon. Even though there's still over 30 hours left, he has already obtained his complete ability. All he needs now is the gravitational effect of the new moon, so if he goes higher up, he's closer to the moon, and well, more science stuff, that's just how it works. Pucci begins counting prime numbers, attempting to find this gravitational spot, as Jotaro is just being his cool aura farming self, just calmly controlling the situation as he looks at Jolyne and tells her how much that she's grown, and also tells her to hold onto the railing, as he then tells Hermes to pick up a nearby gun and shoot Pucci. And with that, Pucci dies. Okay, obviously I'm joking. Imagine that's how the series ends right here. They just pick up a gun, shoot Pucci, and that's just the end of it. But anyways, let's move on. Hermes uses the gun to fire several shots at Pucci, with Pucci using his sea moon to deflect the bullets. But right before they connect, Jotaro stops time, actually taking a page out of Dio's book, but instead of throwing knives, he throws a spear at Pucci since he'll be distracted from the bullets. That way when time resumes, it'll be able to hit him. However, even though time is stopped, Pucci is still somehow able to move his eyes just enough to anticipate the incoming spear. So while Sea Moon deflects the bullets, when time then resumes, Pucci is able to dodge the spear. But with this, Pucci flies back, leading him inside of a space shuttle that is floating in the air that Pucci goes inside. Pucci appears in the shuttle door, telling Jolyne that she has been aiding him ever since she was in prison, before saying, "Our Father who art in heaven, guide me. Watch over me so I may not walk the wrong path. I will give myself to your will," as his whole body and eyes begin to glow and emit light beams out of them. Pucci exclaims that he can now sense the position. He is now at the prime spot for the new moon. Once again, ANASUI wastes no time and he immediately attempts to hit Pucci with his diver down. But before the punch connects, out of ANASUI's arm, a stand appears, with Sea Moon now having evolved into the stand made in heaven, with Pucci saying that the time for heaven has arrived, the power of gravity is now filling his body. We then get a flash of light, and just like that, we then get a cut to seeing Jolyne picking up her head from a table, as she wakes up alongside Hermes and ANASUI, seeing Jotaro standing behind her, as she hears a nearby TV news station talk about the situation at Cape Carnival. Jolyne tells them that it looks like they've now been moved about 200 meters away, as they all look around confused about what just happened and how they now ended up here. He then continues saying that he can still sense that Pucci is somewhere nearby, before looking down on his hand, seeing a bunch of acid-like goo. Which, yes, you may remember this from way before at the beginning of this video, which, real quick, if you made it this far, just a quick thank you. You're truly the GOAT, and I appreciate you for listening this long, and also actually watching this video and not like being asleep or something, just letting this play in the background. If you're doing that, that's so cool, but if you're asleep, well, wake up! Anyways, if that just woke you up, I'm sorry, but I hope you're enjoying the video so far. Let's continue on as Hermes attempts to leave the room they're in, but each time she tries to open up the automatic door, it instantly shuts closed, giving her no time to walk through it, as they also see that the acid has already dried off of them super quickly, as the group is able to figure out that time seems to be accelerating at a pretty phenomenal rate, as the sun outside already begins to set. We then see that around the world, people are all dealing with strange occurrences due to this time acceleration, such as the guy helping his girl feel good for a whole 4 hours. Yeah, Araki's always got to be freaky somehow, but the sun now sets as the group realizes that this is the completion of Pucci's ability. Jolyne senses that Pucci is somewhere nearby, with Jotaro attempting to stop time with the Star Platinum, but with this time acceleration, even his stop time length seems to be shortened. How that works, I mean, time is stopped, but the length of time it stopped is accelerated as well. It's confusing. It's JoJo's. Let's just move on. The stand made in heaven causes a tile Jotaro is standing on to fall, but ANASUI saves Jotaro by falling by picking him up with his steel diver. And well, yeah, he's still a simp for Jolyne that even in this situation, he's like, hey, I want to protect your daughter with my life, so can I get your permission to marry her? Like, bro, this is really not the time. And not only that, but you're asking Jotaro this straight to his face. Jotaro looks at him dead in his face and is like, what did you just say? And ANASUI doubles down saying, please, just give me permission. And he continues saying about how much he loves Jolyne and says that she is what he needs right now and he wants to reveal his heart to her and marry her. And Jotaro responds in about the funniest way that you can imagine. He looks at ANASUI saying, I have no idea what you're even saying. Are you insane or something? What are you babbling about in this situation? Which I just gotta say, that's the most goated move by Jotaro ever right there. Jolyne then grabs onto ANASUI, which essentially just stops this conversation, saying that they need to stop Pucci before he puts an end to the Joestar bloodline, as she sets up a string barrier around them to be able to detect the movements of Made in Heaven if it were to come near them again. A gust of wind blows by very quickly when Jotaro is able to stop time and he actually sees Pucci and Made in Heaven on a nearby palm tree hiding in the leaves, as he summons his star Platinum to attempt to strike them with an aura barrage, before his neck suddenly gets sliced, knocking him back as Jolyne yells out for her dad, as Emporio yells at Jolyne that they're actually behind her, with Jotaro stopping time again just enough to save Jolyne. But when time resumes, we can see that ANASUI actually phased his diver down into Jotaro at the last second to basically tank the hit for Jotaro, so that way the hit to Jotaro's throat wouldn't be fatal, which is a pretty goated move by ANASUI. Pucci continues to dash all around the group, basically making him super fast as he's using the power of the time acceleration, with Jotaro being able to stop time once again, but with each stop time, he has somewhat of a recharge rate, so he just can't keep spamming this, so his limit keeps decreasing each time he uses it. Time resumes again as Pucci dodges another aura attack from Jotaro, in which he zooms behind the group, appearing with his Made in Heaven, saying that he first wants to take out ANASUI and that their sacrifices will be for the greater good of mankind. However, we then get the most clutch moment from Emporio, who isn't playing around, and he pulls out a ghost gun shooting at Pucci, which does miss, but Emporio has Hermes use a sticker on the bullet that was fired, which then creates 2 bullets, as he actually wasn't aiming for Pucci, but rather aiming past Pucci. Jolyne then wraps the group in her string as they hold on to this duplicate bullet, so that when Hermes tears the sticker, this causes them to all zoom towards the fired bullet as it attempts to regain with itself, basically allowing them to now move around even with the time acceleration and increased gravity, with Pucci also rushing after them as they're flying throughout the air. Emporio continues to use different bullets to fly the group throughout the air, leading them to a nearby river, and when they land, ANASUI tells Jotaro that the moment Pucci goes to kill him, he'll give Jotaro a signal, and at that moment, Jotaro will need to stop time so that ANASUI can land the finishing blow and kill Pucci. But Jotaro needs to time it precisely to exactly the moment that Pucci's attack lands for this to work. Pucci rushes after the group, with them preparing for the attack as they're all huddled together in the water, when they notice the sunrise, seeing Jotaro's watch go even more crazy as time accelerates even faster. ANASUI prepares himself for the attack, and right when it hits, Jotaro stops time. However, say it with me guys, nothing is ever that simple. While time is stopped, Jotaro's star Platinum goes to grab Pucci's arm, but when he goes to grab onto it, he actually grabs onto Stone Free, as Made in Heaven had actually attacked Jolyne to use her stand to attack ANASUI. Which, yeah, this is another just take it for what it is moment. But with Jotaro's stop time running out, he processes the situation as he tries to figure out what to do, when then he sees multiple knives falling down towards Jolyne, making him remember his fight with Dio, as Pucci is actually still able to move around during the stop time. Jotaro attempts to strike Pucci, but he's moving so quickly he's basically just phasing through all the attacks, as he tells Jotaro that Jotaro's weakness is his daughter Jolyne. Time resumes as ANASUI falls to the ground, with Hermes attempting to strike Pucci with her stand, with Pucci dodging this and cutting off her arm at the same time that he also splits Jotaro's head in one move, along with the knife falling towards Jolyne hitting her side. Effectively, Pucci just took out all 4 of them in one move. The only person remaining at this time is Emporio, as he looks on in horror at all of this, as Pucci stands beside him saying that he has to eliminate any obstacles to his destiny, as he tells Emporio that to him, Pucci just must be the person that just killed his mother, which is interesting. We don't get any more explanation on that, but yeah, I guess that Pucci is the one that killed Emporio's mother after she gave birth to him in the prison. Emporio, being the G that he is, picks up his ghost gun, aiming it at Pucci and doesn't hesitate to fire a shot, but Pucci dodges it, saying Emporio's destiny ends here, as he goes to strike Emporio. But Emporio somehow dodges the attack, being pushed back to the water, where we see Stone Free appear from underneath them under the water as it strikes Pucci with an aura barrage, hitting him and dragging him underwater as well, as she has roped both herself and Emporio to a dolphin swimming with her string. The dolphin pulls them away as Pucci chases after them, with Jolyne telling Emporio that he needs to go on alone, that Jolyne has to go save her father, and that she also needs to save both ANASUI and ERMES, and that Emporio needs to survive for them as he is their only hope. As we see that Jotaro, ERMES, and ANASUI are actually like full on dead here, with their bodies rapidly deteriorating. So yeah, they are actually dead. Jolyne lets go of the string, bracing for the attack from Pucci as he rushes in and attacks her with the Maid in Heaven, with Jolyne summoning her Stone Free to counter the attack. But Pucci at this point is honestly just no match for her, as he overpowers her, cutting off both her arms as Emporio is carried away by the dolphin, screaming out Jolyne's name. At this point, time is accelerating so fast that it's at the point that it's going from night to day within seconds, as you see around the world that people can't even speak because their mouth starts to instantly dry out. Which I relate to, because that's been my mouth trying to voice this entire video. The entire world is thrown into chaos as the sun is practically sonic spin dashing around the earth, and the entire world looks up in horror, wondering what is going on as everything instantly deteriorates around them. The whole geography of the earth changes as the waves and water wash away, and Emporio is then floating throughout space, all around different animals, sea life, trees, and different types of nature. Emporio floats throughout this space, wondering where he is, when he's suddenly blinded by a flashing light, and then he opens his eyes, seeing that he's now back inside of the prison near the visitation room, seeing 2 people inside that look like Jolyne and Jotaro, but they're just different. Pucci enters into this room saying due to accelerated time, the final destination of time is now achieved, and the universe has now completed its full cycle, creating a new world. Humanity has now reached a common end, a new dawn, and then says that Jolyne is no longer alive, not even her soul, and Jotaro is gone as well, along with ANASUI and ERMES, and that the dead cannot return as he has no obstacles left. Except Emporio, who is not supposed to be here, and he needs to be eliminated right now. Emporio runs away, but as he runs, he starts to get strange visions of the future, such as a guard tripping, but even though he's aware of the future, he can't do anything to change it, since he runs away and he ends up being the reason the guards trip, with Pucci also chasing after him. Emporio runs towards his ghost room before stepping on a mop, which hits his face, knocking him down the stairs near the entrance of his ghost room, as Pucci goes to finish him off at the same time that Emporio is sucked into his ghost room. Pucci goes to reach out his arm to grab Emporio, but in this, he actually pushes Weather Report stand disc into Emporio, which Emporio had on him, as Emporio falls into his ghost room with a new look on his face, as Weather Report, the stand, not the person, appears behind him, and just look at this panel. Like, actually, wow, this is just amazing. I just had to take this in for a second. Like, this is great art by Araki. Pucci attempts to accelerate time again and have Maid in Heaven attack him, but Emporio has Weather Report counter the attack by manipulating the air pressure in the room, causing both of their eyes to shoot out blood. Pucci falls to the ground as Emporio says that there was yet another hidden ability of Weather Report that Pucci didn't know about, that the most deadly poison in the air that we breathe is actually oxygen, and that 100% pure oxygen is actually deadly for humans, and he can use Weather Report to manipulate the oxygen in the room to poison them, making how fast the time passes basically irrelevant, as this is Weather Report's true hidden ability. Pucci yells out for Emporio to stop this, to not let Weather Report do this. He's finally gained his ultimate ability. God had wished for this and chose Pucci for this ability, and if he dies, the fate of mankind will be altered forever. Pucci just can't die here. Emporio tells Pucci that he actually doesn't understand, that Pucci actually lost the fate, as he delivers a massive blow with Weather Report to Pucci's head, basically exploding it, calling him an insignificant brat and beating Pucci into the ground. Now, you turn the page and this may seem a little bit confusing, but I'll explain this really shortly. We then see another shot of the galaxy, then seeing Emporio outside of the Green Dolphin prison on the mainland, which is actually near a bus stop which is heading to Orlando, as well as this bus stop being near a gas station. The bus drives off with Emporio chasing after it, when a passenger gets kicked off of the bus for not having the right money, as the passenger says that they'll go inside the gas station to go get change. As they go to do that, they run past Emporio saying, "Hey, do you got any change?" before the bus drives off, as Emporio looks up and he's shocked to see what looks to be like Hermes. We then see a man leaning on a car nearby, telling them that he can take them wherever they need as long as they give him some gas money, as Emporio sees what looks to be like ANASUI, along with Jolyne inside of the car as well. However, they introduce themselves as something else, with the woman saying that her name is Irene and this is her boyfriend Anarchist, and that they're going to see her father, and if he says yes, they actually are planning to get married. Rain begins to fall down as a storm is brewing, as Jolyne takes off her jacket to cover Emporio, as he sees that she has the Joestar birthmark, as Emporio introduces himself to Irene, saying that he is Emporio, showing that he is still the same person. As they begin to dry off, they see a hitchhiker that looks to be Weather Report. And then we get the famous JoJo shot, the end of part 6 and the end of the Joestar bloodline. JoJo part 6, Stone Ocean, the end. Seeing the shadows of Jolyne, JOTARO, Hermes, ANASUI, and Weather Report, showing that they all have actually died, and we now begin a new JoJo universe. Which, wow, this part, I've already read this before and I've seen the anime, but in making this video and just rereading it and making this for you guys, I just remembered how awesome of a part this is, and I feel like this was the perfect conclusion to the Joestar bloodline. Seeing how Jolyne finishes this off and seeing how Pucci enacted the Dio's plan of heaven, I just am almost at a loss for words. Now, to explain this as short as I can, because there's several videos explaining the ending of Stone Ocean, basically with Emporio / Weather Report defeating Pucci, this now starts a new universe in the JoJo series, or kind of like a new timeline. You can kind of explain it either way, but this starts a new universe basically to where Pucci never existed. And with that being said, everyone just kind of lived a better life. There was no reason for Jotaro to abandon his family, there was no reason for all of the fighting and everything, and so everyone just kind of lived better lives, and that now leads us to where we have people like Irene, Anarchist, and this new version of Hermes and Weather Report. But that's just a brief explanation. If you want something more in depth, like I mentioned, there's several videos on the ending of Stone Ocean, but I just want to say, if you've actually made it this far, I don't even think the word thank you can describe how I feel about this. Like, it's thank you times 100. And I just want to leave you with one last thing. The next video I post, I've already done part 8 and this is now part 6. It's time to go on to part 7, the recap of Steel Ball Run. I hope you stick around for that, and I hope you subscribe to watch that. Thank you so much for watching.